الله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
عليكم السلام.
Salam.
ورحمة الله وبركاته.
who you all may be familiar with from a previous
What's up, guys? How's it going?
Alhamdulillah, I'm well. How's everyone?
Thank you for joining us today as well. We understand you're a very busy man, so
لا لا
just
ربنا يبارك فيكم.
for every moment you invest with us.
لا لا الله يبارك فيكم.
So today we are going to be talking on a somewhat similar problem, but it's on this argument or this notion it's put forward.
Yes, I am familiar with King Crocoduck, Stephen.
And so we're going to open it up with, inshallah, just a sort of brief description of the argument itself as it's put forward by those who put it forward. So I think probably the best person to do that maybe would be Brother Saf. Would you be all right sort of introducing us to the problem itself as you see it, inshallah?
I can try and do that. Do you want to do that now?
God drowns babies. God drowns babies.
Yeah, might as well just jump straight into it unless anyone has anything else they want to begin with.
I just wanted to say that obviously just for those new viewers who don't know who Saf is, Saf has written a book on this topic of the problem of evil.
Can we get to the topic?
He's also he's a doctor, PhD in Islamic studies.
Oh God, he wrote a book like Deepak Chopra.
Studied philosophy, done an MA, and also lectures at university on.
Ghostlight, can you send me a link to that? Some like DM me or something. They're still doing intros. They're not saying anything related to the topic. Blah 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 blah. Alhamdulillah. Thank you, Stefan. What? Don't Ghost, don't put it there. Put it like DM me or put it somewhere I can like actually interact with it. Like Discord. What's up, Ash Media? Yeah, they're still not talking about anything related to the topic. Like nothing related to the topic. Okay. Still not addressing the topic at all. Not even coming close. Like, can we skip to the topic? Still not the topic. How do you stay thin and drink Pepsi? I don't. I'm fat. I'm like 40 pounds overweight. I'm like 220 right now. But I used to stay in shape by biking 20 miles a day, but I'm just too lazy to do that right now because after I got happy. Yes, Hidden Magic. They are muted because they're saying absolutely nothing related to the topic. They're completely, they're just doing introductions, waste of time. They're not saying anything of value yet. They mentioned it. They said the topic is, can God be evil? And then they started talking about this guy's book. That's, they've said nothing yet. Still talking about the book. Ooh. Oh, here they go.
Or odd contention, the evil God challenge or evil God hypothesis.
Yeah. All right, I'll try and do something. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa-salamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. As I was just saying, I think when we started, your brothers are doing a fantastic job. With these discussions.
Oh, they're still not going to get into the topic.
Of,
Okay, still not getting into the topic. Like, could they like skip the topic? It's been like, how long have they been talking? They've been talking for freaking 6 minutes, and they still haven't gotten to the topic yet. Like my videos start with, "Hi, I'm an atheist. What's your position?" Like, takes 5 seconds to get to the topic.
Not a new argument, by the way. You know, it was addressed, or it was raised in the 70s,
Oh.
at least within the literature.
No
But if I
complaint
could
about my
try and put it
property.
in a
Property is
simple
legit.
way. Okay, so what the evil, I'm going to call it the evil being challenge. Yeah? So the evil being, or what's known generally as the evil God challenge. At core, what it's trying to claim is that, take the hypothesis that a good God exists, right? The people who propose this challenge, the evil being challenge, they say, okay, well,
Yes,
why
Roy, I do
belief
meetups all
in
the
a
time.
good God? Why
Happy
is
to do
that
meetups.
hypothesis, you know, significantly more reasonable than the belief in, or the existence of, a evil being hypothesis or evil God hypothesis? So the good God hypothesis is defined based on, you know, the classical theistic idea of an omnicompetent God, you know, omnipotent, omniscient, and omnibenevolent, so all powerful, all knowing, and benevolent, like loving, caring, compassionate, and so on. Whereas an evil being is a mirror, is a kind of counter to that. It's all powerful, all knowing, but it's malevolent, right? It's evil. It's maximally evil. So it has the same attributes as this good God, except that instead of being omnibenevolent, it's omnimalevolent.
Yeah, and explains all the data.
Evil.
The evil God explains all the data,
Now, according to
just
this
like the
evil
good God.
or evil being challenge,
How long does it take to say this argument?
They want to argue that if you believe in a good God, then it's equally probable.
God, they talk so slow.
That an evil being exists as well. Now, how does this argument come about? So we've got to track back a bit, right? So the argument comes out of the general problem of evil. So if you remember, I'm sure our viewers would remember in our show, we talked about the problem of evil. And in the problem of evil, two formulations are the logical problem and the evidential problem. So the logical problem says evil is logically incompatible with the existence of omnipotent, omniscient, and all-loving God. The two are contradictory. You can't have both statements. The statement that there exists a omnicompetent God, and that there's evil in the world.
Okay, the argument is this: it's that there is some data that you are saying is best explained by an all-good God, and we can say all of that data is equally or better explained by an all-evil God. That's the argument. Like, this is not hard. Like, why? We're like freaking 10 minutes in. Like, how long does it take to say the argument?
That given evil, that this kind of being, this kind of good God, doesn't exist. You don't have good evidence against
Don Lowell
for the existence of God. So what the evil being challenge or the evil God challenge does is it says, okay, if we can show that the problem of evil, if a good God is
Jaden, how's it
compatible
going?
with the existence of evil, then it can be equally shown that an evil God is compatible with the existence of good.
So he's missing the point here.
So it's a parody.
Close. Missing the point, but close.
So the evil God challenge says that, okay, if you can show, just
I'm
as you can show
uninterested.
that evil and
It's a
God
good one, Roy.
are compatible, a good God are compatible, it can equally be shown that an evil God and good are compatible. So how do they show this? They show this through what's called the symmetry thesis. So the symmetry thesis
I
is
hope so, Josh.
basically,
I'm going to call in when they open it.
the degree of reasonableness of the belief in or the existence of a good God is equally or is the same as the belief in the existence of an evil God.
That's good. Got
And
it.
whichever way or argument you bring to show
evil
that an evil God exists, it can be equally shown a good God exists, it can be equally shown that an evil God exists.
Yep, that is correct.
Now,
That
one
is the
area
argument.
in which this argument is applied is theodicies, i.e., people,
Hey, Confident, how's it
theists or
going?
believers who believe in God, and also accept that the evil is a reality. They try and explain the compatibility between these two
Yeah, Phil, that's
realities or facts through
good.
theodicies, or
That would be the point of the argument.
explanations for why evil exists. So classically, there are three main ones that are used in the literature. So you have the free will defense, which says,
Garbage.
look, evil is compatible with God because God gave us free will
That doesn't
for
matter.
us to do good,
That still works for the evil
but
god.
that free will can be used to also do morally vicious actions, i.e. bad actions or evil actions. Another theodicy, one explanation for evil, is that, look, God allows or permits evil in the world, or evil is required for our moral growth, as i.e.
Also,
the moral
also
growth of
works
our
for the
human
evil
character.
god.
We need it for
Hey,
character
James,
building.
how's it going?
So through adversity, trials and tribulations and suffering, we become better and more like
Both of those arguments are
we
false,
inculcate
but
qualities
we can
that are
prove them
required
false.
for us to be better worshippers.
But they also work for the evil god.
A
so.
third theodicy is like probably what's called a greater good theodicy. And that says that, look, the suffering in this world that we have, maybe God permits it because in the afterlife, he's going to compensate it with eternal bliss and life in paradise. Now, what the proponents of the evil God
Yes, exactly.
challenge, or the evil
John
being
Pelosi,
challenge,
that is
say,
correct.
is they
You
now
use
construct
700
a parody
words.
or what they call a reverse symmetry, a reverse theodicy. They say, okay, just as you
Thank you
can
guys
use
on
these
Twitch. Appreciate the Twitch support.
theodicies to show that evil and a good God are compatible, we can flip these theodicies and show that an evil God and good are also compatible.
Yep.
So they would argue by flipping these theodicies and saying, okay, an evil God, the existence of an evil God and good are compatible. How? Well, we can explain the existence of good the following way. An evil God will give us free will in order for us
Correct,
to be
Phil.
evil, although the very same freedom can be used to do good, morally virtuous actions. Yeah, see how it's flipped. The second way is the second theodicy. So good will be required for us
He's
for the
explaining this
moral
terribly.
destruction of our character.
I'll explain it for
They
him.
would argue that.
So the free will defense can be said that an evil God could give us free will so that he could allow us to do good things, or allow us to choose to do good things, or choose to do evil things. There could be some greater evil. An evil God allows some good because it will allow for some greater evil in the future. Like, okay. Yeah, well, I forget what the third one was. What was the third one?
Equal can be said about an evil God existing. So it can be flipped.
Hey Shane,
So
how's it
that
going? I'm doing
essentially
really good.
Is what the
My depression has been cured because I finally got the relationship I was looking for. So I'm doing really good.
symmetry thesis just says whatever you can, if it's reasonable to believe in a good God, it's equally reasonable to believe in an evil God. If it's absurd to believe in a
soul building
an
theodicy.
evil
Thank
God,
you,
it's equally
Ghost.
absurd to believe in a good God.
So you could say that
So what
an evil
proponents of
God
these arguments
could
admit,
allow
and this is the key
good
point,
because
this-
of there could be
there
some
is no
soul
evil
building
God.
theodicy
This
of
is
that you could
absurd.
develop
There's no
evilness
such thing as an evil God.
greater way if
But
there is the good there.
equally
So
absurd
works either
would
for both.
be the existence of a good God. You have to either
forgot to mute
reject
there.
both.
Hey Kayfabe, I used to be depressed. I solved it a few months ago. No longer depressed. I'm doing significantly better.
Now, a theist can't reject the existence of God, can they? That would mean they lose their belief.
Thank you, Woody.
So that's supposed to create a kind of sticky bind for the believer. Now, let me stop there to see if people have grasped what the issue is. So it's a parody argument. It's not saying that there is no God. It's saying the kind of God that you believe in, well, I can reasonably show that there is an evil God that is just as reasonable to believe in. Can you see? So whatever you say about a good God, I can construct an argument, a reverse argument to show that an evil God exists as well.
So in other words, all of the things you think are evidence for your good God work equally as well for an evil God. Therefore, it's not actually evidence of a good God. It's just that's the argument.
But the assumption is that they're both
Hey, Bill.
they're both reasonable, equally reasonable.
Yes,
If
by
you're gonna reject
your
one, you
by
have to
your
reject the
standards.
other.
By your standards, they're
You
equally as
see?
reasonable.
So what then becomes the task is
They're both stupid from our standards, but from the theist standards, they equally work.
between a good God and an evil God, a significant way that there's an asymmetry.
Yeah. No, so I think, from my understanding, what people like Stephen Law, who sort of is like the modern proponent
Yeah.
of
He
this
about a decade
particular
ago he
argument.
proposed it. Yeah. But
Yeah.
it's been floating around. Yeah,
Yeah.
before him. Yeah.
So, in essence, what he's trying to say is that, well, obviously you would reject the idea of evil God because look out the window, there's so much beauty and aesthetics, etc. But he's trying to say, well, if you're going to obviously, reject the evil God, you're also
Ghost, I hope
obviously
so.
going
That'd
to
be
have
cool.
to reject the same idea of a good God as well. So he's trying to, it's almost like he's like appealing to sort of the natural intuitions against an evil God and saying because it's symmetric.
Yeah, so the argument is that if you reject an evil God because of the stuff you see, the stuff you see works equally as well as argument against a good God. So the evidence we see works equally as well against your God as against the gods you reject. That shows that your evidence is garbage. That's the point.
That exists. Or equally, he would say, when we look at the world, we can say that we can hypothetically say
I'm like 1,000 away, Woody.
that
11,
goodness
1,200?
in the world,
1,200 away?
Is compatible with the existence of an evil being. So they're both equally probable, plausible to believe in. So that's the symmetry thesis. If believing in a good God is unreasonable, then equally unreasonable is belief in if belief in an evil God is unreasonable, then equally unreasonable is belief in a good God. So they want to make an equivalence or parity between both concepts of God. So if you reject one, you have to reject the other.
Yeah.
So, do you mind if I ask here, what's the parody with regards to the afterlife?
Why
You
do
might
they
have
all
mentioned
have
it.
different volumes? Holy
so
shit.
If a good God allows evil in the world because a greater good will come, like paradise, so that you experience suffering.
Did they not take the time to balance out the volumes before the stream?
With a greater good, which is paradise or eternal bliss. What the malevolent being would do, the evil being, is that he will allow good in the world. Why would an evil being allow good? He's evil. Well, he may allow good to then punish you in the hereafter in
Badger
eternal
Bush.
hell.
Okay, but then within the, like, for example, the theistic paradigm, there is the existence of a paradise and a hell. So within this parody or this symmetry, there would also be the existence of a paradise and a hell. So why would an evil God create a paradise and let people go there who were good?
Well, it's just like a good God.
This
why
is
would you want to
irrelevant from
create
the argument. Like,
hell
what?
or paradise and allow evil people to go there as well eventually, or something like that.
Thanks, Badger.
Whatever you say, some parody is going to be constructed about the good God case. Can you see? It's going to be flipped.
Yeah, no, I can see it can be flipped, but it doesn't seem to make sense from this parody. Like the whole thing sort of breaks down. Like if there is this perfectly evil God,
irony,
there wouldn't be like motivation for a paradise and to allow.
Yeah, and if there was a perfectly good God, there wouldn't be a motivation for hell either, bro.
What you're going into now, Yusuf, is you're going into trying to show an asymmetry between a good God and an evil God. You're trying to show there's some dissimilarity. There's no equivalent. You're trying to show that there's no equivalence between the two, and
that's a 100% similarity there.
There's a dissimilarity or
that's not an asymmetry. That's perfect symmetry. Perfect symmetry there.
In order to disarm the argument, can you see? So the argument is not a logically watertight argument. So it's not undermining belief in the existence of God. Can you see? So what it's trying to show is that, well, if it's unreasonable to believe in an evil God, well, it's equally unreasonable to believe in a good God, because whatever you can say about that, we can construct a parody to say about the evil God. So there's a symmetry between the two. If there's a symmetry, then acceptance of one would mean acceptance of the other, or rejection of one would mean rejection of the other.
Okay. So would there be any?
The symmetry thesis is a crucial thing here. So the thing that needs to be shown is there an asymmetry?
So would this be a good moment to sort of get into that and say, I guess, potential responses to the evil being argument, or do you still have a few more things to say with
Oh
regards
no,
to?
that's the kind of basic way I can just read it off the top of my head. I'm sure we can get nuanced formulations of it, but that's
No,
the kind of
Roy,
basic.
definitely not.
If we had to boil it down, I think for people who probably may have feel lost in constructing the argument, think of it as an argument from parody.
Okay.
You say from this.
They're
You
so
say from the
bad at
existence of evil,
explaining this.
the
It's
existence of
been
evil
20
doesn't
minutes.
disprove
How
God.
long does it take to explain the
Well,
argument?
they're going to construct a parody and say, well, the existence of good
What?
doesn't disprove the existence of an evil God.
I'll do it again. All of the things that you can say that indicate a good God also work for an evil God. Therefore, there's no evidence of a good God. That's the argument. This does not take 20 minutes to explain.
The character building theodicy and the greater good theodicies, these can be flipped to show why they'll be equally applied to an evil God and good.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. So we'll try and bring Brother Abdul Rahman in here now as well. So have you got any sort of comments with regards to what's been said so far? Like, for example, like, what sort of responses would you maybe levy against someone bringing forth this particular
That's
argument?
definitely right, Woody. It's going
Yeah,
really,
so
really slow.
Walaikum salam.
yeah. So yeah, as Dr. Saf put it, I mean, it's really about creating an asymmetry, right? In the parity arguments that are provided. For example, the parity theodicies that Dr. Saf mentioned, and I really don't think that's difficult to do. In terms of the theodicies, it might be more tricky because it really depends on like in terms of the theistic theodicies, for example, the free will defense or the free will theodicy, that in the theistic context, that might just be presented as an
Badger,
alternative
exactly.
possibility to get out of the logical problem of evil.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I mean, you could even grant to the evil being proponent that well, you could use a similar maneuver to just as a logical possibility to get out of a logical argument. But I think it's more done in the context of a positive defense of a good God using theodicies. So, like for example, pointing out an asymmetry in the free will defense is not that difficult because, well, we know from our experience that freely choosing good is not the same as freely choosing evil. For example, I mean, we know that we tend towards, or we incline towards evil and selfishness more naturally than we just incline towards certain kinds of good. So there's more of a challenge there. Just pointing out any difference, I think, creates an asymmetry.
That's right.
not an
We
asymmetry.
need to point out a difference, but what they'll press is to point out a significant.
People are actually typically more good than evil, so that would actually be evidence against your God, not for it.
Is that the evil being challenge or the evil God challenge put by these proponents, whether they're called anti-theists, Mao-theists, whatever you want to
Hey,
call
Jaziki.
atheists, they will also want to say that the concept of an evil being and a concept of a good being are equivalent. Not only that, not only that, they would want to say that any arguments you bring for the existence of God, ontological, cosmological, teleological, whatever it might be, are equally apt to demonstrate the existence of an evil being because
that's right.
Natural theology doesn't point to the moral character of God; it just points to certain attributes.
Well, we're going to clearly disagree, right? Because
of course.
So I think in terms of pointing out asymmetries in the theodicies, maybe they're a bit like weak or not as clear when you're talking about the cumulative case, right, which is natural theology, and how clearly I think that they're not on equal ground. For example, you've got the moral argument for the existence of God,
Works
and
equally
I
as well for the evil God.
Just throws a wrench in this narrative that there is a symmetry because I mean, we can talk about the moral argument, but I think it does point to God being the grounds of objective moral.
You can just switch that morality exists to objective immorality exists. It's the same argument. What?
Also, I mean, I think maybe you can talk about this later, but then even as far as cosmological arguments are concerned, contingency arguments and stuff, and God's independence, I think there's something from the evil God argument that would basically result in some kind of dependence. This evil being's dependence on creation in order to basically manifest any kind of evil, and this is related, of course, to the privation.
No, unless good is the privation and evil is the source.
Case is concerned, it's just much easier to point asymmetries because of things like God's independence and obviously considering the nature of evil.
Absolutely nothing he said is an asymmetry.
So the moral argument is a very strong one as well. And I don't know. I think you're. I saw in your notes you're going to talk about the epistemic
Thanks,
concern
Wes.
as well, because I think the evil God argument does leave you with some kind of possible radical skepticism. That how do we know that this evil God that created us?
No, it does not leave you with radical skepticism. It leaves you to the fact that all theist arguments are bullcrap and worthless. So theist arguments are crap, and none of them work. That's what it leaves you with.
True, as opposed to in the case of a good God, where he created us, and we would expect the knowledge that we have to be like vertical. So I guess from like an overall angle, it's just for me, I think it's easy to point out certain asymmetries, and Dr. Saf can elaborate on that, inshallah.
Inshallah. Yeah, so just to kind of, because we mentioned the paradise one, and if we go into that, I think it makes quite a clear asymmetry pretty easily. Like, so for example, you would say, well, there is a good reason why a good God would create a hellfire. That is because of this concept of justice. Evil people should go to the hellfire. And when you flip that and you talk about the evil God, it's like, well, why would he create the paradise? Because injustice is important, and therefore you should send good people to paradise. So this,
there's no inconsistency there. The reason that God would create evil or hell is the same reason that an evil God would create heaven. There's no difference there. It's like there's such a dumb argument. Like, obviously that's wrong.
But I don't think when they argue for an evil being, they don't believe that there is paradise, do they? They don't really posit that. They just say that you live an evil life, and then you go to hellfire, and then you have eternity of evil.
But then
there is no paradise. They don't posit that.
Either one could work. Either one works the same. Whether or not there's paradise makes no difference to the argument. If there is paradise, it's the same reason for why your good God allows hell.
Stephen Law, as the Dr. Stephen Law's sort of formulation, some of it has to be fleshed out, because one of the issues with this argument, of course, as we'll see, the theistic side's fleshed out because you've got data from
No, it's not.
Natural theology from Revelation that tells you
Revelation
the kind of being and character this.
Oh boy, guys, they imagine an all good God. That's evidence of all good God. No possible way that could be wrong.
On the theist side, it's filled out, but on the evil God side, I know, they have identical attributes, absolute power and knowledge, except for benevolence, they have malevolence. But then, certain axioms have to be delineated, because if they don't, then, weaknesses show, and then those weaknesses can be exploited to
Thank you, Cosmic.
then, undermine the argument. And I think that's where the maneuvers can be made. You see, exploit the
what maneuvers? Show us the maneuvers already. Give us an argument. It's been like 25 minutes.
Jake's been a bit quiet. That always worries me.
30 minutes. Nothing of substance yet.
No, I'm just listening. Yeah, I kind of struggle why. I mean, I understand the argument as far as what Saf is saying about symmetry and so on, but I mean, if you're not really convinced or don't think the arguments for a necessary being or any of these other things are really good, then what's sort of the point of it? I mean, I understand it's a hypothetical, but
good question.
I don't know.
I'm with you, bro. I'm with you on that.
That's a great question. The reason is to show why they're garbage arguments. They're completely garbage arguments. They don't work because they work equally as well for the opposite conclusion. So it's not actually evidence for the conclusion you're trying to indicate. So the whole point is to show why all of the arguments that you think work are complete garbage. They work equally as well for the evil God. That's the point. They don't indicate the good God. That's why they're garbage.
Cool. But, for people seem to be bothered by it, or they seem to ask, how then do, it's true, how can we show, from natural theology, whether it's a good, it's a good God, compassionate, Rahman, Rahim, or not. Can you see? So I get. I'm not trying to put down that. I really am not. But for
I
me
think-
personally, if I were to conclude early, I really,
Yeah, I think what it
Probably
is
fine.
atheists are just trying to make theists feel icky about
I get that.
belief
And
in
that's
God.
one of the objectives of the argument. You see,
No, it's not to make you feel icky. It's to show that your own logic is self-defeating. Your garbage arguments don't work for a good God any more than the exact same arguments work for an evil God. So the fact that you understand they don't indicate an evil God also shows they don't indicate your God. The whole point isn't to make you feel icky. The point is to make you show that your own dumb arguments are dumb arguments.
Idea that arguments for God's existence aren't very good.
They're not. They're
Which-
garbage.
Which kind of seems to beg the question a little bit, because clearly
how
we
does
think
that
the
beg the
arguments for God's
question?
existence are very good, and I think the reason he does depend on this is because
Doesn't beg the
if
question.
the arguments for the existence of God are good, and I think he does acknowledge that there do seem to be objective.
This is a reductio ad absurdum. If your arguments are good, then they would also work as evidence for an evil God. They don't work as evidence for an evil God. Therefore, the arguments are not good. It's not begging the question. It's using a reductio absurdum.
And he has to rely on his assumption or his belief that the arguments for the existence of God are poor in order to say, well, since they don't work, then there are just seemingly objective moral facts, but there in reality are not.
That's not what this argument says. We can grant their objective moral facts, but they're grounded in immorality, whereas good is the privation of evil rather than evil being the privation of good. So this doesn't presume there is or isn't objective morality. This is just making a parody of your garbage arguments and assuming they're true to show it leads to a reductio ad absurdum. Like, you just don't understand the argument. Like, what are you doing?
The arguments from natural theology. So I think like the moral argument alone, like just sort of makes the whole challenge really crumble in consideration of the fact that the arguments for the
Grande is
existence of God
correct.
are good.
No.
So I think I think he relies on this idea that let's put arguments for the existence of God and against the existence of God or denying them, the atheist and theist position. Let's put them on a level playing field, and from there, let's do this hypothesis.
Let's see if your garbage arguments can work for the opposite conclusion. Because if they can, then they're garbage arguments. This is not assuming that they're actually work.
And I think most of them cannot be parodied. Some of them can, but most of them cannot be parodied using this.
Could you give an example? Example would be great.
Saf, can you really quickly,
Example?
without going into the details of each of the arguments, but could you just list the types of responses to this evil
that
being
could be made.
challenged?
Well, I guess a number of lines of attacks can be made to this evil God challenge. You could begin to attack the notion of an evil being itself, an evil God.
By
its metaphysics, its nature. It's
we can attack a good God.
the notion
So
itself to show
this is
that
the
it's
same.
incoherent.
Good God is incoherent. That's what
You
atheists
could,
say.
You could show
This is the
that
same.
You could attack it by showing that, look, even if, let's say, there is a symmetry between the existence of an evil God and a good God, what kind of, from an epistemological standpoint, a standpoint of knowledge and belief,
There's no evidence of a God. So
what kind of position would I take at that juncture? Is there any outweighing evidence that I should look at, preferring one over the other?
nope, because all of your
what's
evidence
gonna
works for both.
tip
That's kind of the point.
Which way is my belief going to favor, an evil God or a good God? So what other outweighing evidences
Good question.
are there for me?
What
to
are they?
tip my belief in favor of one or the other? So you can take those kind of epistemological.
What are they?
reasons.
What are the
Yeah,
reasons?
higher
Like
order
you guys keep
evidence.
like saying there are these reasons, but don't provide
Also attack,
any.
what
No
kind of
reasons.
assumptions are being made in the argument? Like what notion of evil is being used, for example?
Yeah, like your
What
assumption that
what
there's
kind of notion
good.
of evil
Mm.
does this argument or challenge rely on? You could take another approach. You could take is to show, okay, there are independent, I think it's what Abdul was just mentioning, there are independent arguments to show why there is a belief in a transcendent cause or creator of all reality.
Also works for an evil god.
Independent of this particular challenge, which is an evidential
Okay.
challenge anyway.
All of those
So
also
one, it's
work for
not-
the evil god.
It's not a malignant challenge, i.e. it's not showing a logical contradiction.
Yes, it does. If
So,
all of the arguments you use work for
so
both,
in that sense, it can
logical
be
contradiction.
innocuous, if we can use that word. And the fourth one you could say is, and I don't know if Jake, if you were hinting at that, and maybe I was agreeing though, if my sensation was right, is just having indifferent to it, just avoid the argument. So what?
So what?
It
All of
doesn't,
your arguments,
it's not.
all of your arguments are so garbage that they work equally as well for the exact opposite kind of a god. Yet, so what? Like, how do you not understand the power of this argument?
Existence and character and so on, because they can be established via other independent arguments.
Like
It's
what?
natural theology, scripture.
Scripture.
Things like that. So you can be indifferent to it, so it doesn't really bother me. Even if I do concede, it doesn't disprove anything about God and his character, because I can establish that for independent evidence. The other one is to
Like Scripture
avoid
and
it.
Revelation.
That's another sort of response, just to avoid the argument. Why? Because this kind of argument relies on heavy speculation about the nature of this malevolent being and what its psychology is and what its motivations, desires, attitudes, and so on are. And that takes the mind into a realm of speculation that just becomes more and more fanciful and really, really beyond, as I've sensed it from some of the literature, just beyond any kind of practical or reality sense.
Oh, like
The
all
other
of
thing as well I
religion,
find is that
not practical,
why
no
avoiding
basis in
might be a
reality.
good option is often whatever response you give, the maltheist or the atheist or whoever the proponent of the challenge is always going to
Maltheist.
tailor
What's a
some
mouth
kind of response
theist?
ad hoc to your response. So it just becomes tit for tat, and it almost borders on like shifting the goalpost. Sort of
Yeah,
thing.
if we're parroting your
And
stupid
so,
ad hoc arguments,
you know,
yeah, they're also
or
going to be
turning
ad
the
hoc
tables,
parodies
just
because
turning
it's
the tables and going round and
parroting
round and
your
round.
ad hoc arguments. Duh.
So those are some of the responses. So one, to show that the idea of a malevolent being, a maximally malevolent
I have
being,
no
is
idea if they'll let
incoherent,
me in, Ron. We'll
to
find out.
problematize the assumptions that the challenge has, to have epistemic positions. Which belief should I favor if both of them are reasonable? And fourthly, being indifferent to it or avoiding it. So those, I think, there are probably more, but those are, I feel, are some
Well,
of the
none of
major
those
ways
worked, so
or
it still
maneuvers
defeats
one
your
can take.
whole position.
But I can
So
think of one more
Just
as well. So say, for
somebody-
example... Oh,
Sorry, somebody in the chat is saying another response can be appealing to revelation, and I think he's right.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
your
Yeah, we
imagination.
said that.
Yeah.
We can appeal to
Yeah.
independent information, which is natural theology or scripture. Yeah.
How does your imagination count as evidence here? Like, you imagine God is good, therefore that's evidence God is good? What?
Equal playing grounds, and that we don't have independent reasons. And for me, and maybe Dr. Saf can go into this one, I think one of the best.
Also, Scripture says God murders the crap out of all people, so like evil God would far better fit the evidence there. So like it doesn't. Like, Scripture would actually indicate the evil God.
Because when you talk about evil and privation, you can see how good is a natural, untouched state of things, and
Begging the
evil
question.
is a privation of.
So that's a begging the question, assuming that evil is the privation of good. You can just say that evil is the fundamental thing and good is the privation of evil, and the argument just mirrors perfectly. This is stupid. Like, obviously that works equally for the evil God.
A world where God exists alone, and if you say that, I mean, in what sense is he
Bible says it.
maximally evil?
Boom.
You can be maximally good in the sense that something that's untouched or neutral can be good. It doesn't have to be like there doesn't
Untouched.
have to
What
be
does that even
positive
mean?
activity in order for goodness to exist, but you require positive activity in order for evil to exist. So
That doesn't even make
God existed
sense.
alone.
What is this
In what
positive
sense would he be
activity
evil?
garbage?
He would need to actualize something in order for his evil to manifest, and that just makes God dependent
You could
on
just
the existence of
switch
something. He
the
couldn't be
nouns.
maximally
Just
evil
take
unless he
everything you've just
actualizes
said.
something in order to
Flip.
ba-
So all of the gibberish nonsense he just said, you can just take the exact sentence, flip good for evil, just change the nouns out, and poof, you now have an equally good argument for evil. It just works exactly the same. Just switch the nouns.
An evil being or an evil god, a maximally malevolent being. So an evil god if it's maximally evil, that's what we're assuming, right? That's the hypothesis. Needs to create other creatures in order to maximize their evil, right? Because and
Oh, you mean like how a good God needs to create other creatures to maximize their good?
and it does so based on, we would say, I guess, fulfill some kind of selfish end, because a malevolent being will be selfish, right? It's ego oriented,
I don't
or
know.
self-regarding. So this maximally
Not
malevolent
necessarily.
being would therefore create sentient creatures like us, human beings, for a benefit, and that benefit for it, is a self-serving, egoistic reason. But as you
You mean like a good God who creates his creatures because he wants them to love and serve and worship him? Like, again, the scripture seems to support the evil God here significantly better.
something, so by which it has that thing, it then becomes completed. So by needing something to create in order to be evil, that malevolent being would not be complete. It would be an incomplete malevolent being. So it wouldn't be a perfect.
Nope, that works
malevolent
exactly
being,
the same way as a good God. If you're just
Now, this is
arbitrarily
different
defining some
from
kind of a need
the
that
good
it
God that's
wants
traditionally
something,
understood in
guess what? Your
metaphysical
God
theism,
wants a
belief,
relationship, so it's incomplete
or
by your own
definitely in
definition.
Ash'ari
So
tradition,
again,
for a fact,
that works equally as well as a parody
that-
argument.
any need
Yeah, damn it.
or aim or ghaya. Yeah, he doesn't have there's nothing that he needs in order to complete his act.
Except for you worshiping him, and he wants you to worship him and to love him, exactly the same as the evil God wants you to hate him.
Create creation because he wanted to create creation purely out of a contingent act of benevolence. There wasn't any need.
Contingent act of benevolence. Woo!
Creation. So he gives. He's al-wudud. He's al-rahim. He's al-rahman. And he manifests these attributes purely for the benefit of his creatures, not for his benefit. So a God.
That would be the same. If you arbitrarily define your God as doing things for the benefit of his creatures, you can say the evil thing does things for the anti-benefit of its creatures, to harm its creatures. Still work the exact same way. Still a parody. That you haven't presented any kind of counter argument here.
Benefit his creation and to exemplify his attributes of being loving, merciful, compassionate. Whereas a malevolent being is in need of creating something in order to manifest his evilness. So there's
Nope.
an asymmetry there.
So
that's why.
Nope. You can just say evilness is inherent in its nature and doesn't need to create everything. It'll be perfectly evil. Like, you're just begging the question.
A malevolent being itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, can I?
I mean,
Yeah. So I want the audience really to focus on this particular point because I think it's a really important point.
Word salad tastes good. Yeah.
What in essence you're saying?
Yep. Exactly.
Sharif,
you're
again, I'm
breaking
not
up.
sure. Yeah,
We're having trouble
sorry,
here, man.
breaking up. Can you hear me?
Yeah, and Yusuf left.
As well.
I think the evil God or evil being is taking over the stream or something here.
Shaitan.
Yeah.
Shaitan. The evil being. Yeah, no, but I just want the audience really to focus on what Saf just said, because in essence, what we're saying is that a maximally evil being itself is incoherent. Yeah, I think firstly we have to have an understanding when somebody's
maximally good being is incoherent.
Yeah, so if you mean by evil maximally, seeking out suffering for something external,
No.
or
No.
Yani doing it because this being absolutely wants to feel the evil.
What do you mean by good? Just take what you mean by good and reverse it. This is not hard.
Outward, this expression of evil it doesn't require an outward expression in essence. It's inward, because this being can just be self-hating maximally. Yeah. In that sense, why would this being create other beings?
Why would God do it? Give your answer, reverse your answer. Just switch the noun in the middle of the sentence. You're done.
In that way. And then you said, but a maximally good being explains why we would see creatures, because a maximally good being is something that it seeks an outward expression, or would contingently create outwardly out of its love and mercy. Yeah, because it doesn't just maximally love itself, but also has this opportunity to go out there and love other things. So you have this problem when people posit a maximum evil being, is that why do you account for creation? And
Yes,
you
you
have a
can.
problem accounting for creation.
Yes, you can. You can say he hates everything and he wants more things to hate.
And I think also there's another thing that maybe you can discuss, or the other guys as well can mention as well, is how do they understand the term evil? Are they looking at evil as something which is a denigration of the good or the corruption of the good, some sort of privation, or are they seeing evil in another way?
Good is the privation of evil. How do you guys not understand? This is so simple. Take your argument, reverse it. This is so easy.
Of the evil being for a second. I think that somebody could likewise, and again, this goes back to symmetry, say the same thing about the good God, or and in this case, we're talking about the evil being, right? So they can say, well, the evil being has a want to create because he wants other people to suffer. And he wants them to be in pain, and he wants people to be tortured, etc. So me personally, I just don't see this as going to be able to work, because I think they can likewise just as easily say the same thing about the evil being. I don't know what you think of that.
Sorry, this is in response to the idea that we can say that the God is good because he
They are
creates
so bad at this.
creatures that benefit from good, basically.
Okay, so what we're looking at here, as far as I can tell, is creation more likely on a good God or an evil being? That's basically what we're looking at, as far as I can tell. And I don't see necessarily how you're going to make the case on that singular point.
No, I think what the incoherency argument is trying to show here, I think, Jake, and chime in, what it's trying to show is that, okay, if you're going to attack the concept of a malevolent being, then one way you can attack it is to say, okay, how do you show an asymmetry between a maximally good being and a maximally malevolent being? Here's one way. A maximally malevolent or evil being will need to create others in order to show and manifest that evil.
A maximally good being would need to create others in order to show its love.
So in order to maximize
Yeah, I get that, but Sharif was making a slightly different point. So there's two different points, that in virtue of him being evil, he would need to create something, which then therefore would mean that he's dependent, which means he's, in that sense, that he's not going to be maximal, because one of the other attributes that we considered that were already agreed upon is that he's independent and he doesn't need anything, right? So that's one argument.
Yeah.
None of you have provided any evidence that evil would be dependent, whereas good would not be. Like, you've presented no evidence of this. Nothing you've said shows that evil would actually be contingent and good wouldn't be. You've just made this ridiculous assumption that to be evil you need to create something, whereas to be good you don't. Like, you've provided no evidence of this.
Is that what the issue that you're going to have then is, on the one hand, if you on the argument that you're giving of him being evil, so therefore he's more likely, or he sort of needs to create, and in virtue of that makes him dependent, then that also someone could argue it makes creation more likely. And so in virtue of the fact that we have creation, that's actually evidence in support of the evil being over the good God, who seems to be less likely to create in virtue of the fact that he doesn't need creation.
But it still makes him dependent, right? So you agree that it would make him dependent if he created the
so
evil
he doesn't
God.
have a great making property. If he's dependent,
so bad at this.
He's imperfect. He doesn't have a great making property, whereas imperfection, so perfection is a great making.
Great making properties are made up anyway. You can make a potato a great making property and it's equally as reasonable as what you're saying. So it's completely made up.
Over a being who doesn't have creation.
Yeah.
But the being who doesn't have creation has the great making property of being perfect.
Yeah, but then like I'm saying, they could simply make the move, and they would have to at this point say that, well, in
No.
virtue of the fact that we have creation, it's more likely that the being is evil, and so they'll bite the bullet on this dependency thing and say,
But then I've got a significant asymmetry now, though.
Yeah.
I've now generated a significant asymmetry because it's to do with a property.
yeah, but I think
No, you haven't.
to say because on the
How
one
would it
hand,
be more significant though,
because
if you not have a great making property.
well, but that's the point. You're
Because great making properties are made up. It's just making shit up. I can make up a great making property of potato.
being dependent, the evil being. Okay, he's dependent. The omnibenevolent God is not. I get that. But I'm saying if you're taking data points and you're looking at creation and you're saying in virtue of the evil being sort of creating, it's almost as if he's more likely to create. So I'm then taking the data point of creation existing is also more likely on the evil being hypothesis.
But the problem is they want to grant stuff like cosmological arguments because they want what they want to do is they want to parody these arguments. So the idea is like if a cosmological or any form of cosmological argument gets us to an independent being, they want to maintain that and parody that argument with the only difference of plugging in an evil character, right, and maximal evil character. So if they give up the independence, then suddenly we have a very, as Dr. Saf put it, we have a very, very significant asymmetry because they're not parodying the arguments anymore. They want to grant those arguments that they think don't imply anything moral, are basically amoral in nature.
Yeah, I get all that. I get all that, but I'm trying to push back and try to make a response to that.
Yeah. But even if you concede that and say creation, but this malevolent being, because it creates, that must be a significantly a better thing than a omnibenevolent being that doesn't create. Surely the former is better than the latter. But at what cost, though? At a cost of losing a great making property. So there you got the significant asymmetry you're looking for. But even if, let's say, the evil being, you concede there, it doesn't matter. You can go on to construct more incoherencies in the notion of an evil being. Can you see? There's not just the only argument available. There are more to show what the concept itself is incoherent.
Yeah. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. To me, if I can make the claim that, well, the evil being, he sort of needs to create, I don't see why somebody couldn't make the same claim about the good God.
Yep.
Wouldn't you say the same? Jay?
Because he's more likely because he and
that's
as
completely
as you may or
separate
may
argument.
not know,
Oh my
I mean,
God.
Saf, I'm sure this is familiar, that people actually argue based on this account that because God is good and is merciful, that it's almost as if he creates out of necessity because he wants to share that mercy and that goodness. And there are people
that's
that
a good argument.
actually have that theology. So I'm saying,
good job, Muslim metaphysician.
I don't see how they couldn't say the same thing.
Don't you think the same would apply to, like, you know how we critique ideas about, like, let's say divine simplicity and stuff, like models of God where creation is necessary?
But then you'd have to make a parity, right?
Applies?
And say the evil God is also a God that has to create out of necessity. Because you have to have parity, right?
Yeah, but I'm saying the parity would apply because now the good God is also dependent.
Yep. Good argument.
For divine simplicity, for example, so you have this situation as well. So a divine simplicitist can tell you that, well, hey, it's more likely on divine simplicity that you have creation. But then the thing is,
no, you're not getting me. I'm saying, okay, so what's the reason why the evil God has to create?
Because he couldn't manifest. I mean, how can you exist alone and be evil without manifesting your evil? You can have an inherent good.
Thinking evil thoughts.
Yeah, that's the thing. So I think this argument, Jake, I think it would depend, and Dr. Saf can elaborate on the privation theory of
yeah. But what I mean is, even if this is what I'm saying, even if you say, okay, he doesn't need to create, this evil being doesn't need to create, that's fine. But even if this malevolent being, self-reflects and self-hates itself, Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's what he would have to do. Right? His evil is an expression of hate, right? It's not love. He doesn't self-love. He doesn't have any values. He has disvalues, or it has disvalues. Well, that is even worse, because what that will do is that will lead to a kind of being who is supremely worthless, self-hating being. And what we would say, the entailment of a supremely worthless, self-hating being is to fluff itself out of existence. Its self-hatred should lead to its own self-destruction. That's the kind of incoherency we get led to by having.
That's dumb. So a perfectly evil being would kill itself? What? That makes absolutely no sense. Like, a perfectly evil being would create as many things to destroy and cause suffering as much as possible. He wouldn't destroy himself. That makes no sense. That's dumb.
And that to me is significant asymmetry. That's significant asymmetry. A supremely
don't think
worthless
so.
being should result in its own self-annihilation.
What?
I don't think so.
That's
'cause
dumb.
I could just argue that my intuition is that
Okay, what's the conclusion of a self-loathing being?
What's more evil, a being who destroys itself or a being who creates infinitely many other beings and causes them to suffer? Like, which is more evil?
wanting to be about yourself. So it
Good
doesn't
argument.
mean that you have to hate yourself. You can hate others.
So
So
what was that, Jake? Sir?
you don't need to see being evil to me is not necessarily hating yourself. It's hating others and loving yourself.
No, but
That's
that's
what
not how
evil
the
is.
evil being is framed, though. Malevolence is not framed by the people who propose that argument.
Well,
It's
I
not
mean, that's
yourself.
what egoistic is to me.
You can't have the property of love because you don't have benevolence. You can't have that property. That's not part of you. You have malevolence. You can't have love in any form.
Because
You
it
see,
has
that's
to be
the point.
maximal as well, right?
Yeah, you have to be maximally malevolent.
You
i.e.
can't put an
self-hating
arbitrary
and
yeah.
evil. Otherwise you'd have to say what you're doing. You're giving a hybrid now of malevolence and benevolence, but you can't have that unless someone comes along and constructs it.
It doesn't need to love itself. It doesn't feel any love. It just feels an overwhelming compulsion to suffer things. It doesn't need to love itself. It doesn't need to hate itself either. It doesn't have any opinion on itself. It wants to destroy all other things.
His own justice and his own goodness. Can you see? And because of those considerations, that manifests in certain whatever laws.
Thank you, Bruce
and
Wayne. Appreciate it.
However he acts. But this malevolent being can't have. There can't be a symmetry between what a good God has by having those properties and an evil or malevolent being, because how does malevolence manifest? It doesn't manifest in any value.
That's what I'm trying to say. How does it?
It doesn't. It manifests in disvalue. There can't be any good that comes out of the malevolent being. That's
But if there's nothing happening, there's there's nothing one way or another.
Yeah, there can't be a secret good that the malevolent being has by virtue.
So the counter argument here would be is if there is a perfectly good being and it only loves itself, it would only create itself or more versions of itself with no change. So it wouldn't create anything other than itself if it loves itself more than anything else.
I think, yeah. See, I think there's two ways of looking at it, isn't it?
Another way to answer this would also be to say that if there was a perfectly evil being, it wouldn't destroy itself. It would want to cause itself to suffer too. So it would want to suffer, and it would want to create as many people as being as possible to cause them to suffer.
So here, that's one of numerous types of incoherencies with this idea of maximally benevolent being, is because this idea of I want to torture somebody because it makes me feel good. Yeah, well, the whole idea is that this evil being...
No, it wants to torture other things because it makes them feel bad, and it wants itself to feel bad.
There's a moral standard in lieu of which now this evil, malevolent being does things. That's another argument against this.
And feeling good and feeling bad isn't necessarily moral anyway.
Somebody can't be evil. I mean, I'm kind of lost.
No,
because you're saying that if they're evil, it's also good, and that can't happen.
No. I think the idea is there must be a.
Thanks, Bob.
In order for evil to exist in the first place, because you can aim for that goodness in a evil way or in the wrong way, which would be the evil. But I mean, if it's all evil, then I mean, me personally, I can't even picture that. I mean, even if you think of it just in terms of simplicity, existing alone, how are you evil? Well, you said he's going to be thinking evil thoughts. Well, okay, I don't know if that's evil, but then I think intuitively you would agree that, on the other hand, an evil being that exists alone can be just good. I mean, you could. So I don't remember where I saw it, but you have this example of, let's say, like an untouched paradise or garden or something where nothing's happening. Well, you don't want to say that's neutral
Bob,
or evil. You want to say that's good. It's just
Bob, I might be able to call in once they open up the call-in thingy, but they haven't done that yet. So right now they're just talking to themselves. They haven't opened it up to callers yet. But when they do, I'll try to jump in.
just I don't know what it's.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't make
I think
sense.
there needs to be some
Yeah.
kind of activity in
Yeah,
order for there to be evil.
I mean, you can't say mega.
There needs to be some kind of activity for there to be good. If it's just there on its own, it can't be good.
The evil that they do is because in lieu of some greater good. You can't say a malevolent being, right, is acting according to fulfilling a good for himself. Well, hang on, you can't smuggle that in. Now you're saying there's some external good by virtue of which this malevolent being is acting. So in order to fulfill the actions of this malevolent being, it's acting according to some kind of standard of goodness. I mean, that just defeats the whole concept of a malevolent being. Can you see?
No,
So
doesn't.
the whole notion is incoherent.
Should we
Yeah,
just go
but-
on to this question?
The whole notion of your God is incoherent.
We'll bring people.
Yeah,
into
I'm
discussion.
not persuaded.
Wouldn't the argument be so Jazakallah khair to Aruh for the super chat? Wouldn't the argument for be a fallacy of ignorance, since morality is based on God, the necessary existence? Therefore, saying this is evil or good is a value judgment, and that's based on our limited perspective of the context. I think there's two points that's been asked in this question. One point is that morality is based on God, the necessary existence. That's one point. And the second point is saying that, well, the way we view good and evil is based upon primarily our own limited judgments, and our limited judgments are influenced by emotional dispositions. You know, what we see, what we like, and what we dislike.
I think this is a good point, but like part of it doesn't work because, well, it's assuming the existence of an objective standard. So I mean, you could say maybe objective evil exists, but again, as I just mentioned, I don't think that makes sense. I just don't know what it looks like for there to be an unadulterated inactive evil, but I can think about goodness in that sense.
I don't know what it looks like when there's an unadulterated perfect good. It's just something you've made up.
But about the value judgment part, I think it's interesting because what it assumes is that, wait, there is an objective standard, and we can differentiate between good and evil.
You don't understand reductio ad absurdum.
Argument to work in the first place, and for God to be actually evil, you need to at least hypothetically, for the sake of argument, acknowledge that standard. But if you are acknowledging that standard, then I think you're granting at least part of your moral intuitions about good and evil. And when you're acknowledging part of your moral intuitions, I think that just takes you back to the moral argument. And really, the idea is that you want to argue that objective morality doesn't make sense in the absence of God, or moral realism doesn't make sense in the absence of God. And I think that's very doable. But so yeah, I think part of the argument kind of assumes some kind of objective standard.
No, it doesn't.
But the other part, I'm not sure it works because you're going to assume there's maybe an objective evil.
How do you not understand parity arguments?
Yeah, my issue is that what you guys are basically saying is the notion of pure evil is incoherent.
No.
And
I'm not saying incoherent. I just
a
intuitively.
malevolent being that's defined as being maximally evil.
Yeah,
That's
but you're
what the
saying
argument
if he performs evil in the sake of himself, then that's also good, and so therefore it's not purely evil. That's what you're saying.
No, I'm saying if whoever proposes the idea of a maximally malevolent being, if he acts out of self-interest, or it acts out of self-interest, but is the self-interest
good
based on some kind of perceived
Yeah,
good?
Exactly, but that's what I'm saying. Then you're therefore saying that nothing is purely evil, because if he does it out of self-interest, it's not purely evil.
but there's a problem for people who propose a maximally malevolent being.
I know,
because
but
then
I
the
think
sky
that's
is good.
I think that's an absurd consequence, because I want to say that Hitler, for example, the things that he did was purely evil. But you on this, I can counter and say, well, no, it wasn't purely evil.
The Muslim metaphysician is kind of missing the point here. That's not actually not really an objection to what they're saying.
That's what it would result in, and therefore I could use that as a counter argument to say that that's actually a good because he's acting out of self-interest is incorrect.
Hitler would have defined that maniac would have defined it in some good on his own interest, right? He would have defined himself because he would have.
But that's what evil is. That's my point.
Well, no, Jay. I don't think it's that. I think the issue is this: is that it's not the fact that he's not doing evil. We say he's doing evil, but Hitler himself doesn't think he's doing evil. Hitler thinks he's doing something for a good. Yeah, that's the issue.
Yeah.
A maximally benevolent being is not doing something evil because he thinks he's doing something for some sort of perceived good. He knows he's not doing it for perceived good. Whereas Hitler thought he was doing it for some perceived good.
He's doing it for himself.
But
who's
yes,
that?
but
Hitler?
the other thing about Hitler example, I don't want to belabor on the Hitler example. He's delusional. He's a maniac. One of the entailments of a malevolent being is delusional. Is maximally delusional. So whatever a malevolent being does, he doesn't do it out of some sense of rationality. It's maximally delusional because of the entailments of that property.
I think what Jake is saying here is that basically, if you say that this maximally evil being couldn't basically do,
weren't they going to go to callers like 20 minutes ago?
Because he would be doing it to achieve some kind of good.
Come on, callers, get to callers.
What he's basically saying is that if you compare that to any evil that's done, then you'd basically have to say that this evil that these people are doing isn't evil. I think that's generally what Jake is saying.
Evil. Of course, we'll say, but their subjective perceptions, of course, make them delusional. And a malevolent being is delusional. He doesn't have the properties that a good God has. Can you see?
Yeah, but I think the point he's making is basically just the idea that the pursuit of good, basically, if it entails that
bad. These guys are so bad at this. Like they just don't understand any of the basic philosophy. Like what is going on?
Yeah.
Like these guys are so bad at this. They don't understand the philosophy at all. Like come on. If there's a perfectly evil being, then it wants to maximize evil. Destroying itself would not maximize evil. Therefore, it won't destroy itself. Duh.
So I don't think that is as convincing for me, and I see Jake's concern. I think the more convincing part for me is when you start off with defining what evil is, because we need to define our terms, and I think it is very plausible that evil is a privation of good. I think that is plausible.
Good argument.
And for me, it just really boils down to the essential attributes of this hypothetical being, right? And if
I wouldn't go down this route.
If the challenge grants you the argument for the existence of God and all the essential attributes that we agree upon apart from goodness, which is what it does, then I think if you're going to maintain
guys are so bad at this,
and maybe.
Oh my god! I wish I could turn this to 4 speed, skip to the part where they stop saying dumb, pointless things that don't actually address the issue because they don't understand anything, and we let's let in someone who actually understands the issue to explain it to you because none of you guys just don't understand it. You're not even addressing the actual argument because you don't understand it. Maybe skippity skip.
However, it existed eternally.
Why can't he use the reverse? Why can't he use the reverse argument?
Yeah, because here we're appealing to intuitions, because that's what I told you. So picture an untouched paradise or garden. I mean, I don't know what inherent evil would look like in that garden, in that that exists.
Yeah, but you're already calling it paradise. It's a nice garden. How is it going to sound?
If it's an untouched garden, it's not moral. It's amoral. There's nothing moral about that. It's not what.
That sounds like inherent evil.
Yeah, but there's gonna be activity there. I'm thinking
Scream
of
into
an
the mic.
inactive state, right? I'm thinking of a state that's just.
If it's inactive, it's amoral. It's not moral.
I'm thinking of an evil God pondering all the different ways from eternity past that he could torture the most amount of people.
Yeah, but first of all, you're gonna have to assume that that's already evil, just the pondering. And second of all, you're still
Oh, you mean like how you're assuming the garden is inherently good? Oh, you're appealing to the exact same thing. Ah,
the ultimate good.
Okay,
I don't need to posit any kind of activity.
So on a malevolent being view, do you think a inactive malevolent being is less malevolent than an active malevolent being? So a malevolent being just sits.
do you think an active moral being is more moral than an inactive moral being? The same argument works for both. Wow.
Whatever sentient creatures it wants to make, but doesn't quite make the leap, yeah, for whatever reason. But then there is another malevolent being who actually says, no, I'm going to make the leap and I'm going to create sentient creatures and I want to torture them. So which one fares better?
Okay, watch this. Okay, so you have God who's good, right? And he's just by himself, and then you have God who shares his goodness with creation. Which one's better?
Well, sharing his love and creation wouldn't diminish God in any way.
Yeah, but it would make him better because he would be sharing his goodness.
Wouldn't make him better.
Why not?
Yeah, it would.
That's not from one of the axioms of what a good God is.
Yeah, but then that just goes back.
It's not one of the axioms of what an evil God is. Here.
No, because you're appealing to my intuition about the malevolent being not doing anything or torturing people, and I'm appealing to your intuition about a good God who doesn't do anything and a good God who shares his goodness. It's the same thing.
Yeah, but even if a theist argues and says, God's expression of, through creation, not that makes him he was less when he didn't create, but that isn't the case. That was come back to my original argument. Isn't the case with the malevolent being?
Yeah, but then it still makes creation necessary.
For who?
The good God.
Not necessarily. No, the God contingently creates creation to express his love and care and compassion and mercy.
And I'll say the same thing about the evil being.
What?
He does it contingently.
How can his malevolence be
Testing,
expressed?
testing.
How is it going to be expressed?
Testing.
Yeah, but then we're back to square one about him thinking. And the same thing with the good guy.
Testing. Right.
Me personally, not okay. Then let's talk about that. Until then, I have no reason to even discuss this with an atheist. Because now he's arguing from a position that he doesn't even actually hold. It's just like a guy who told me the other day, oh yeah, I'm asking what his position is. And he doesn't want to tell me when he really is an atheist, but he says, you know what? I'll grant you deism, but I want to discuss theism. No, I'm not doing that. You're not a deist. I'm not going to argue with you as if you're a deist because you're not. You don't even believe in a creator. So that's my approach.
Yeah, I know, but the argument here to show the asymmetry is that a maximally malevolent being will need to create in order to manifest that that malevolence. But a maximally perfect being is already perfect. If you take those two together, they're asymmetrical. Can you see?
Yeah, but it's the same thing with the evil God because he's already perfect. He's perfectly evil.
Well, if who?
The evil God or the evil being. He's perfectly evil.
He's not perfectly evil, though, is he?
Yeah, but that's the thing. You're just saying.
Yeah.
You're saying he can't be perfectly evil unless he creates to do X, Y, Z. Why can't I say that God can't be perfectly good unless he creates and does X, Y, Z?
Because the concept of a good God is supreme being is already his perfection is already part of his property. Can you see?
Yeah, but I can say the same thing about the evil God. I don't see why I can't say the same thing about the evil being. I just don't see it.
To achieve its goal of maximizing evil, how does it achieve its goal? It can't achieve its goal by self-contemplating its own evilness. Can you see?
Why not? Why not? Why does he?
Because according to those who are proponents of the argument, that's not, that doesn't make it more depraved and cruel. He has to satisfy his desire to inflict maximum evil by creating others. That's how a malevolent being behaves. This is what I said before. I think it was in my notes.
Okay, so then what's their response when you say that therefore it makes the evil being dependent upon creation? What's the response?
Because because now it's imperfect, isn't it?
No, but
Why is it-
what's their response to that?
I don't know what the response. Those who are proponents of it have to bring
Yes.
forward the response.
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah, that's okay. Well, then
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can't deal with it. I'm trying to act in their seat and trying to respond
sure.
accordingly.
I'm
But
sure
I mean,
there is a response to the objection for sure.
But I think obviously these are just one lines of the argument. I think we listed out a number of lines of the argument. I think one of the things that Abdurrahman and also Saf mentioned earlier was about the argument for revelation, the argument for morality, which becomes
Also,
more
don't
plausible if
work.
we accept a necessary being. So how do you ground morality? It doesn't make sense to be able to ground good when you accept a necessary being if you believe that there's a malevolent being. Makes no sense. Similarly, how do you ground truth and logic upon a malevolent being? Again, it doesn't seem to make any sense. If you have that. So
Logic isn't moral or amoral. It would work equally as well under either one. Like what?
even if somebody doesn't necessarily see one line of argument necessarily as a good line of argument, there's a number of other points that when you add them together, you're going to come to this picture. But also, I tend to also agree to a certain extent in terms of Jake, because I recently
I take
got
Jake's
this
point. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I got this question myself, which was that somebody said, well, he was an atheist, and he said, well, how do you disprove an evil God? And I'm like, well, firstly, let's not talk about the properties of a necessary being. Let's talk about whether the necessary being exists in the first place, because I think it's sort of an escape route that atheists use to say, look, evil God. And it's like, well, yeah, but you don't believe in God. So really, you need to go back to the first stage of the argument to a certain extent. I think there's a super chat as well, by the way. Sorry, really quickly. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants people to reach him through his attributes willingly. Would an evil God care how people reach him, his evil attributes?
Well, his malevolence, we wouldn't care about what because he's not a supremely he's not a being that is supremely good. He's a supremely worthless being. Can you see? So what would a worthless being do with notions of worthiness and things like that? Can you see? So that's one of the entailments of being an evil being. You're not the supremely good being, are you? That's the good God. You're supremely worthless.
I think this point generally relates to the epistemic consideration because
so it boils down to then one of the maneuvers who says epistemic. Okay, so based on your own whatever previous experience, intuitions, on if you think they're both on a par, an evil being and a good being, epistemically, what favors you, what type of being favors you, or do you think what type of being, what evidence tilts in favor of one over the other? Can you see? And that could be considerations to do with, for example, pragmatic reasons. It could be evidential reasons. So those who feel that they're at a junction of, I'm not sure which being is more worthy of my worship, a supremely worthless being, malevolent evil, or a supremely good as ground of all goodness and beauty and compassion and love and care, all that kind of stuff. So all values. So I'm not sure whether to worship or submit to a being that embodies all disvalues or a being that embodies all values. Here other epistemic factors can come in.
And brother Muhammad Huzaifa comment as well. Second good comment from this brother. The Pascal's wager is also a very good consideration because I mean, no matter what you do, no matter what.
Pascal's wager, I've debunked that many times in past videos. Literally is not evidence of anything.
Pragmatic, the epistemic encroachment view in epistemology. Yeah, where you think of pragmatic, we think of reasons other than evidence only to justify your belief in certain things. So there could be pragmatic factors that you can.
Still waiting. These guys still have not gone to video guys yet, to call-ins yet. They're still wasting time, not actually addressing the issue.
The epistemic encroachment, pragmatic encroachment view.
Yeah, I think we should probably go to the guest.
Yeah,
first guest.
Go to the guests.
Yusuf can't hear you.
Yeah, I'll bring them on now. So first guest we have is TJump. Hello, TJump.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Can you guys hear me?
Not bad, how are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, hey, perfectly.
Good. So I've been listening to your whole conversation. I think that Jake had made some really great points. I think his representation of the evil God was spot on, because you can say that the evil God, who is perfectly evil, wants to instantiate that evil as much as possible, and destroying himself wouldn't do that. If he just destroyed himself, then there would be no evil anymore. And he wants to have the most evil, so he would want himself to suffer and as many other beings to suffer, presumably, as possible. So the evil being would not destroy himself any more than the God being. Like, you could just parody that. If you thought that was what evil was, you could just say perfect goodness would only be the God loving himself and not creating anything. But obviously you would disagree with that being the definition of goodness. And so we could just say, well, no, perfect evilness, he wouldn't destroy himself either. So it seems like the perfect evil being could answer all the things you just mentioned and perfectly exist and explain other beings and have a reason to create other beings just fine.
I think it answers that single point. I agree with you. I mean, he wouldn't necessarily destroy himself. I don't think it answers the other points. Yeah. So I think, the fact that he would destroy himself, I don't find that compelling.
What other points?
It's a possible entailment of maximal self-loathing.
It's possible. I think he's just.
That's all I have to show to create an asymmetry, and then you can counter. That's fine. Then we get tit for tat. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I only have to show it's possible. It's conceivable from an entailment. If we're going to take, if we're going to axiomatically lay out the entailments of maximal malevolence, if you're self-hater, clearly, you have no values if you're a maximally malevolent being. One of the possible entailments, self-loathing, from what we observe in the world with self-loathing human creatures, is, unfortunately, some people take their lives.
Sure. So, but I could say the same thing. It's possible that the entailment of perfect goodness is that he loves himself so much that he would only ever create versions of himself that are perfect. That's also a possible thing, and so it would equally refute the good God.
So what's also a possible thing, sorry?
So just like you said, it's a possible entailment that a perfectly evil God would destroy himself. It's a possible entailment of a perfectly good God that he would only love himself, or only love or create himself and versions of himself, things that are perfectly perfect.
Okay, but how is that significant asymmetry there? I mean, so a perfectly good God creates things in its own image?
Yeah, and so that means it would be impossible for anything else to exist other than the God or the exact copies of the God. That means we couldn't explain this world.
Well, you're saying no, but that's replicate. I'm not saying. You're saying that a good God will have to replicate itself. Well, we do get in Revelation that God creates image-like, right?
No, I mean exactly himself. I mean, there can be nothing else. There's no humans, no sin. There could be nothing non-perfect. God is, it is logically possible. It is a possible entailment that a perfectly good being would never create anything other than perfection.
It's not. You could say it's not a logical entailment that whatever he creates, it has to be perfect.
Right, but it's a possibility, and that's what you said. All you have to do is show it's a possibility.
Yeah. But what's problematic about that, though?
That would mean that our world doesn't exist. So that would be the problem. So if you want to say that,
if you take the best possible worldview, I mean, there's ways of going tit for tat.
Well, no. So I mean, like, your argument is that it's possible that an evil God would destroy himself, and if he did, well, then obviously there wouldn't be a world. So
as an entailment, yeah.
But so obviously we can say, okay, that's not the correct interpretation, but we can say there's other possible interpretations of what an evil God would be like, which would be one that doesn't destroy himself. And that would explain everything we see just fine. So just like you could say that there are possible good gods that wouldn't create the world. Well, obviously they don't exist because we have the world. So there's also possible good gods that would create the world. And so we would have to eliminate both of the impossible gods on both spectrums. And so it would still be a perfect parity. It would still work equally as well for the evil God as the good God.
Yep.
But you'd have a problem in terms of a good God creating another good God, wouldn't you, TJump?
Not really. I mean,
replica God, yeah, of course.
Yeah, we'd say it's a logical impossibility. You can't have
making godlike creations.
I mean, it wouldn't make a difference to the argument if you wanted to say it was possible. Like, God could just have himself and only himself in a universe, and that'd be fine too.
But that's different argument, though, isn't it?
Well, it doesn't
so
make
you're
it.
saying that can God create another God? That we'd say that's logical impossibility.
No.
Because by definition, a God would have to be independent, and you can't.
But that's not what you said, right?
The
you
transference of independence.
What did you say? You said God creates other godlike creatures.
I would say God loves himself, so he would only create, if he created anything, he would create things equally as good as himself.
Replicate himself.
Yeah, if that was possible. If it's not possible, that's fine too. It would still not change it would still be a parody. It would work both ways, so that wouldn't change anything.
No, but that's not a possibility, though. You
It-
can't have a possibility of God creating another God.
Sharif,
I think that's a possibility.
Sharif, I can just grant that, and it's still a parody argument. So whether or not it's possible doesn't make a difference to the argument.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
we're
I
saying-
think I would personally
Well, I
grant
think-
to jump this point because I think that so in terms of logical possibility, yeah, I mean, I would say that the fact that God that it is a possibility is a possible entailment of God being evil to, kill himself or destroy himself, or whatever, is just that being a logical possibility. You can parody that on the other side. I just think
Yes.
the other considerations are stronger,
Yeah,
like
so
the
why don't we
privation. Yeah.
why don't
yeah.
we go to the other point that Saf was making about dependence?
Well, I'd say the evil God
Yeah.
isn't dependent. The evil God is perfectly evil and can be perfectly evil with no dependence. So I'd say that, like, I forget who was it who used the perfect good garden example.
Me.
Yeah. So I would say that like a garden on its own you can't say is good. Like, there's nothing good about it. It's amoral. It's not good or bad. It's just nothing is occurring. For something to be good,
I would disagree though.
well, let me finish. So the argument is that just like you say you would need other beings for evil to be instantiated, I can make the same argument and say, well, there can't be good unless there's other beings for it to be instantiated. If there was a God on his own, that wouldn't count as good. He'd just be amoral. There would be nothing there for him to interact with to be good.
Can beauty be good?
I don't think so. I think it's just a description.
It's a goodness. It's a perfection. It can be. There can be an unadulterated form of something that you consider goodness. Well, my argument is that that's more likely than there to be an unadulterated, untouched, inactive form of evil. Because what would that even mean? It's just, as you said, it's amoral at best. But you could say that God is inherently good. You could at least, intuitively conceive of something that's inactive and inherently good, but inactive and inherently evil. I'm not sure what form of evil it takes. Really, what's evil about an unadulterated existence?
Right. So I'm granting your argument, but I think the same thing is true of good. Like, a perfect existence with nothing there is completely incoherent to say it's perfectly good. Like, I don't think beauty could be good. That doesn't make any sense to me. Those words don't make any sense to me. So to say that there's like
I can exist alone in a state of goodness. I can be good.
How? It seems like that seems equally as impossible to exist alone in a state of evilness. I don't see the difference there.
No. It's because goodness can be something that's regarded as inherent. You know, the privation theory of evil, where
Right.
evil is a privation of goodness. You can conceive of that. You can conceive of like evil being a lack of goodness, but goodness being a lack of evil. I mean, how does that work? Because normally
The exact same
evil
way.
works is for how? Go ahead.
Well, that's what I'm asking you, because it seems completely incoherent to say a goodness just exists and then anything that's different from that is the evil. That makes no sense to me. Say there was a single thing with no other beings, it can't do any good, just like it can't do any evil. But you're saying it can. You're saying that there is some way that a thing can just be inherently good without other beings there.
Yes. Because I'm not assuming some kind of like consequentialist approach to what is good and what is evil. I am assuming that something can be inherently good without necessarily resulting in further goodness. But I can picture that. I can picture somebody that's just inherently good and inactive in terms of perfection, but I can't picture
Oh, did he freeze?
something that is inherently resulting in any lack of goodness or increase in evil.
Right. And I'm saying I can't picture that at all. Could you help me to try and picture it? So could you explain to me how something can be there and be good inherently, and how that's different from something being there and being evil inherently? Because it just means, to me, it just seems like you're saying the words, but I don't see anything different between the two.
Perfection. The thing that exists alone is perfect. It is perfect. It is inherently perfect. It can be inherently evil because it doesn't result in any evil.
I don't
I got a
understand.
kid crying. 1 second.
Okay, I don't understand
Yeah.
the argument there, because I could say it's perfectly evil on its own, and that would make just as much sense. Like, I don't think you've explained why it has to be perfectly good and perfectly evil.
If a malevolent being, is maximally malevolent, doesn't need to create, right? Just like a maximally benevolent being doesn't need to create, right? So there's parity there, right?
Sure.
But but why would it create in the first place? A maximally good God doesn't need to. Yeah, doesn't need to. Just like a maximally malevolent being doesn't need to. But why then would unless there's some kind of disguised benefit, perhaps it was seeking, by virtue of which now it has to complete, by virtue of which it now it completes itself, which means then it's not perfect if it required that completion in the first place. I mean, that's just, it's not watertight asymmetry, but it's a possible, asymmetry. So why would a malevolent being create then? Why would it create sentient creatures if it didn't need to?
To express its evil, just the exact same reason why a good being would create.
Right. So to press it further, to express its evil for what? It doesn't need to. It's maximally malevolent. It doesn't need to create us and then torture us unless there was something it was seeking in order to, for that.
Exactly the same as a good God.
To create those sentient creatures like us. Why would it want to unless it was seeking some kind of, I don't know, self-expression of, I don't know, whatever it might be. But whatever it is, it's seeking it. And so it's seeking that. And that seeking is a form of completion on the part of that malevolent being.
No, I'd say it's the exact same as a good God here. So why would a good God create other beings? Well, it's to express its goodness, to share its goodness.
Benefit,
right. And so you could say an evil God is going to create them for their anti-benefit, for their, I don't remember what the opposite of the word is, but for their suffering or whatever. So detriment. Thank you. So yeah, for the exact same reason, you could parody the reason the good God creates good beings and just mirror it and say, well, that's the exact opposite. The reason the evil God creates evil beings. So it seems to work one-to-one parallel there.
So do you mind if I touch on?
It doesn't.
You're assuming
the asymmetry here. Hang on. It's oblique here. Sorry, Yusuf, go on. Yeah, Yusuf, go on.
No, so you mentioned before that the only thing that a good God would create would be something equal to itself, and that if it couldn't, that it would just exist alone, or something.
That was a response to say when what's it say? When Saf said it was possible that there was an evil God that could kill itself, I said it's possible that a maximally good God would be of that kind. Right. So I wasn't saying that was necessary.
But the asymmetry is established through the good God doing it for is other oriented, right? Whereas the malevolent being does it for its own self-egoistic. So what does it do for? It doesn't do it for others.
Yeah. So the maximally evil God would want itself to suffer and want the other things to suffer.
Yeah, but how is it suffer in virtue of others? That's the question.
I don't understand what that means.
Why is it creating? You're saying it wants others to suffer, correct?
Yeah. It wants to maximize the evil, so it wants to create as much suffering as possible. But it's going to suffer itself, and it wants as many other things to suffer as possible.
Right, but then in that case, it seems like self-interest.
No, it'd be the exact same as God sharing his goodness with others for their benefit. I don't see the difference there.
But TJump, I'm a bit confused because I think you have a view that I think the best of all possible worlds is a world where there is like the least imposition of will, right? So I'm thinking of you alone in a world where there's no imposition of will on you. I mean, do you think that's good?
That would be amoral, no. So immorality is an involuntary imposition of will, which means something else stopping you. Or
how is it the best of all possible worlds, though?
Well, I'm not sure what that has to do with the topic. So like
because I think if you define goodness in terms of an objective, right, or a state of perfection that is aimed at, and I'm telling you that you can exist in a state of perfection alone without any imposition of will, without any evil, then for me that's a state of goodness. I mean, even if you're a consequentialist, you say that we aim for maximum goodness. Well, there could be an inherent state where the world is in, where it is in that maximum goodness, where there is a being who is completely free, completely perfect, and I would see that as something good. I wouldn't see it as neutral. I would see it as good. So if that can be regarded as a standard or as an objective for on which we base our determining of whether something is moral or immoral, what we're going for, the goal of goodness or perfection or lack thereof, then I'm telling you there can be an unadulterated state of perfection. If you're going to say the same thing for an evil God, that, well, you might want to say something like, well, it's an imperfect state, so it's not good. Well,
no.
So what do you say?
Yeah. So if we're going based off of my definition of morality, I would say a perfectly good universe would be one where everyone's will was free to achieve itself, and a perfectly bad universe would be one where all wills were perfectly restricted. So by my definition, you would be able to have a state which is perfectly good and a state which is perfectly evil, but I don't know why that would be relevant to this conversation.
So God is alone, and he is perfect, he is independent, and he is perfectly free.
Okay,
so there's no imposition on will there. So it's a good state of affairs that you would like to aim to, like let's say as a consequentialist, for example.
No, I'm
I don't
not
see how
not
you
a
can-
consequentialist, but so my
I'm saying-
view.
I'm just hypothetically. I'm just saying.
Well, that's
it
not
could
my
be-
view. So my view is not having your will imposed upon is amoral. Morality is having your will achieved or having someone help you achieve your will. So there's a difference there. But it doesn't pertain to the conversation about the evil God argument.
So let's say if you were a consequentialist, something good would be that aiming to that state where there is, the least possible imposition of will, right?
No, it wouldn't be aiming. It would be the outcome that has the least amount of consequences.
Yeah, I'm saying if you were a consequentialist and you determine moral rights and wrongs through whether or not it's directed towards that goal, then that would be the goal you want to achieve: a world with least imposition of will, right?
What? I'm not a consequentialist, so you're straw manning my argument, saying, "What if I was a consequentialist and I did my model?" Those are
what I am saying is.
I'd like to get back to the topic if possible.
No. What I'm saying is the fact that is your idea of a perfect world. That
I'm not a consequentialist.
Yeah, but that's not the point. The point is you see that as a perfect world.
I see a world with no involuntary imposition of will as amoral.
No, but
is it the perfect?
I don't think you understand what my model is. It's not relevant to the topic.
What do you mean by perfection in this case?
In my model,
what do you mean,
this
why
isn't
the best of all possible worlds.
I mean, you can go check my debates on that, but it's not relevant to the debate topic here.
Because in what terms are you saying it's the best? I'm saying it's good.
Well, I'm saying there's like a physical object, like a law of nature, like gravity that exists, and it's the instantiation of the maximization of that law. So it has nothing to do with the topic here today.
Yeah, but yes, it does, because you're saying that the best of all possible worlds is one where there is least imposition of will. I want to know in what sense it is the best if you're not saying it is a moral best.
I don't think you understand my model. Like the reason north is up is because that's the way the compass is pointing. It's a measurement of a law. This has nothing to do with the topic.
That's fine. It can be just it can just happen to be a matter of fact that the best of all possible worlds is a world where there's least imposition of will. That can be just a matter of fact that we happen to find in nature. What I'm saying is, if that state is in existence, if it does actualize, and a single being in that state isn't doing anything, then for you that would be the best of all possible worlds.
Again, you don't understand the model and has nothing to do with the topic. I'd like to try to get back to the topic if possible.
I think it does have something to do with the topic, because I think the idea of a being that exists alone, who is perfect, with no imposition of will, and is what I'm describing as something that is inherently good. I can't picture something that is inherently bad if it's perfect, because keep in mind that the argument, the evil God challenge, aims to parody the argument, so it's going to grant some of God's basically attributes, that his omnipotence, his omniscience, his the fact that his attributes are all maximal. So you're going to have a perfect being existing alone, a maximal being existing alone, but I'm saying that
he couldn't be evil. He couldn't be evil because he's alone
I addressed,
and there's no imposition of will.
I addressed that before, because there could be, if you're using my definition, there could be a universe that's perfectly evil, which is a being who has all of its wills completely restricted. It can do nothing it wants to do. That would be a perfectly evil one.
You wouldn't be parodying the arguments then, because it couldn't be the case that God has his will restricted. That compromises on his
Again, this is where you're making a false analogy here. In my model, there could both be a perfectly evil universe and a perfectly good universe. That would work in my model. It has nothing to do with the debate here today. Like it's not relevant.
How can it be perfectly evil if your model is dependent on the question of what is the best of all possible worlds in terms of moral considerations?
That's just a label. That's a label for the model. It's dependent on evidence. It's an empirical model.
Okay. So
but I'd like to get back to the topic if possible.
Okay, let's get back to the topic. So this is what I'm telling you. I'm telling you that there can be an unadulterated inherent state of goodness, and by goodness here, I mean absolute perfection and freedom, right? So there's absolute perfection and there's absolute moral goodness, right? But you're saying, so I don't think there needs to be activity in order for goodness to be actualized. I think a state of goodness is a state that we aim for. For example, I can be perfectly happy, and that's good. And on certain, moral theories, that would be a certain moral goodness that we can aim for, a state of happiness. So I'm telling you, there can exist a state of perfection that is inherently good. I can't see a state of imperfection, or I can't see a state of inactivity that is just inherently evil because nothing is happening. What's evil about it, really? It can be inherently good. It can be inherently desirable. It can you can say it's good in many different ways depending on how you understand goodness or a lack of goodness. But the point is, I can't see how it can be inherently evil without any kind of activity. I can't see how it can be inherently evil without actualizing or manifesting some kind of undesirable state.
Well, it's exactly what you just said. It's like there's some state that we have a desire for, and then there could be some state we have a desire against, and that would be the evil one. So everything you just said works equally as well for a perfectly evil state.
How is this maximally perfect independent being in a state of undesire? I mean,
How is it in a state of desire?
There is nothing happening. There's nothing happening there that could basically manifest any kind of evil. And a lack of activity can mean that you're in a state of goodness. Can mean that you're in a state of.
You haven't demonstrated that yet. So again, I keep asking you, what's the difference?
See, listen, I'll grant you that this is based on my intuition, but I think it's a common intuition. I think it is a common intuition that something that is untouched can be good, but and I also think it's a common intuition that something untouched there's nothing really that can be evil about it, because it's not really in any state of activity that would actualize anything undesirable.
Well, I don't know what you mean by intuition here, because we can definitely imagine there's a rock that is pure evil. That's a thing in many religions, or there's a rock that's pure good, also a thing in many religions. So my intuition is that neither makes sense. Neither makes sense to say there is a perfect untouched state that is perfectly good.
Okay, so would you say that this, maximally evil being is like in a state of like, because you just said he doesn't have to be self-loathing, or you said it's a possibility.
Sure.
You said he doesn't have to, but in order for you to basically parody what I'm saying, you'd have to say that he's in the maximal state of basically self-loathing or undesirability.
Sure, he can be. That'd be fine. Like, there's no contradiction there.
Then wouldn't Dr. Saf's argument follow that if he is in a state of why?
Because he wouldn't destroy himself. It's more evil to cause yourself suffering and to create other beings to suffer. Wait, let me finish. Let me finish. So if there is a maximally evil being that is perfectly evil, he wouldn't destroy himself, because if he destroyed himself, then there would be no evil. And he wants to maximize evil, so he would cause himself suffering for as long as possible.
You're going back to an unrelated point. We already came to an agreement, to a common ground, where the good and the evil is a maximally desirable state and a maximally undesirable state.
Okay.
So in the undesirable state here, forget about the amount of evil in the world. This God does not will to exist. He's in a state of self-loathing, as Dr. Saf put it. So the amount of evil that exists is irrelevant. My son's crying again.
Okay, so he wants to maintain the most state of uncomfort for as long as possible. It's uncomfort and evil here are synonyms, so it doesn't change the argument. It's just he's going to make, if he stopped himself from existing.
So there's an asymmetry. There's an asymmetry right there. So in my case, he would want to maintain him wanting to maintain his perfect, desirable state for an eternity is something that's clearly more plausible than him being in a maximally undesirable state and wanting to remain in a maximally undesirable state for an eternity.
That would be a perfect symmetry there. So if a being is perfectly evil, and in the definition of perfectly evil, he wants to maximize discomfort, and that's how you define it, then yeah, he would be in a discomfortable state and want to maximize his discomfort.
You're just adding that into there. But the point is, which do you find more plausible? A person who is in a state of maximal happiness who wants to live on in that maximal happiness, or a person who's in a state of maximal misery who wants to live in that state of maximal misery?
I don't know.
It's sort of, do you mind if I just jump in? So it sort of sounds a bit contradictory to say that this maximally evil God would desire an undesirable state.
No, that's just a fragment of language. So if he's maximally evil, well, I want to address his point first. So if he's maximally evil, his goal is to maximize evil. Or this, whatever, if you want to call it discomfort, it could be discomfort. You could just change out the words. There's synonyms in this case.
Yeah, but then he has a goal, and then that's a good.
There needs to be a motivation.
Goal doesn't mean good. Like Hitler had goals, they weren't good. Goal does not mean good.
You're moving to another place here. Forget about what the consequence of this being is going to be, whether he's good or evil. Right now, we've come to a point where there is a state of maximum desirability and a state of maximum indesirability or suffering. So the point here is that on these two hypotheses, I think one is more likely to be an eternal being who doesn't have this self-loathing where he'd just like kill himself or something. And on the other, you would have a being who is in a maximal state of suffering that is more likely to end his existence or deal with that in a way, in whatever way other than just being eternally in this state of perfection. I think there is a clear asymmetry there. You can't say that existing in a state of suffering eternally is just exactly the same as existing in a state of
Sure you
happiness
can.
eternally.
Sure you can, because you're just making a presupposition about what you think the God feels or what you
No, I'm
think the
giving
God's
you
motivations
oh
are.
no. I'm giving you reason from our experience that a state of happiness is one that is desirable.
Right. So you're
Actually,
comparing.
built in within the
What-
definition of desirable and undesirable.
You're right.
is
So you're comparing
desirable.
God to us. You're saying, oh, well, we don't like it, so we would stop existing. Therefore, God might not like it, and God would want to stop existing.
You were just doing that. You were doing that earlier when you
What?
said, "Well, hey, I could conceive of a God that would do such and such based on his maximal evil." I mean, you have to start off from your experience, otherwise the concepts of good and evil wouldn't make any sense anyway. So I think this is a
No.
moot point. I think the idea is which hypothesis do we have more reason to believe? An everlasting state of happiness willingly, or an everlasting willing state of suffering and misery? I think clearly it is more plausible to choose a hypothesis where there is an everlasting state of perfection and happiness. It's just, if you deny that, I think you're just denying it to. I think you're just trying too hard at this point. But
Well, no, it's
but,
pretty simple. Like you've made up this discomfort thing. It has. I don't think discomfort has
you
anything to.
kind of
Wait.
agreed to
Let me
it.
finish.
Now I
Let me
made it
finish. Let me finish. So yeah, I agreed to your argument for the sake of the argument, but I don't think discomfort has anything to do with evil. Literally,
So
good
you
and evil
agreed
aren't
with it
about
for
comfort.
the sake of the argument,
Yes.
but right now that you saw where it's leading, you're not agreeing with it anymore.
No. So
That's
again,
interesting.
I can agree. I can accept your argument. Still doesn't work. But again, you've
Why?
made up this because the whole point is the evil God hypothesis. You've made up this new criterion. So we're going to add in this new criterion, which has nothing to do with the evil God hypothesis, discomfort. And you're going to say, I'm going to define discomfort into evil. I'm like,
Yeah,
all right.
any criteria you're going to use in order to determine a maximal good or a maximal evil is going to be, at least by subjective standards, made up. We're going to have to work on plausibility and implausibility based on our intuitions in some way. I mean, the point
Okay.
is that you saw where the argument is going.
No,
You
no, I
saw
saw. I
that
showed it didn't work. So again,
No,
you
you didn't.
yes,
Right now
I
you're
did.
saying I made up the definition.
Well, you did.
See, I started. See here. This is where your moral.
What
theory
does
is
discomfort have
irrelevant.
to
You
do
were
with
saying
evil?
It's irrelevant. One second. You were saying it's irrelevant.
It
Your
is.
moral theory, but I think it is. I said that a state, being existing alone in a state of ultimate freedom with no imposition on will for you is like basically the best state possible.
No, that's
right?
amoral. So you got that wrong.
Yeah, but 1 second. It is the most desirable state. It can be amoral. It is the most desirable state. Now I'm telling you, if I can use that as a standard for ultimate objective goodness.
Well, it's not.
then what
If it's not.
said it's not.
Wait. You just said it's desirable, but amoral. So amoral, it's not the perfect standard of goodness. It's amoral. Those are completely
saying-
different
wait,
things.
Sorry, you're saying being desirable, it can't be desirable and amoral?
You can desire evil. Desirability has nothing to do with good or evil
No,
or moral or wrong. This is why
yeah,
you're
yeah,
conflating
yeah.
this desire thing, which has nothing to do with good and evil.
I think so. Desirability can be evil in the sense that you can exist alone in a state that is desirable and be evil.
You can desire good. You can desire evil. You can desire anything.
that's
Desirability
state
has
of
nothing
a
to do
state
with
of ultimate
morality.
happiness, a state of ultimate happiness where there is a being existing alone, not causing any suffering, not even having the capacity to cause any suffering, can be a state of ultimate evil.
Desire has nothing to do with good and evil. Desire has literally nothing to do with good and evil.
That's your claim. What I am saying is that goodness and evil are very often defined in terms of state of desirability and suffering, happiness and suffering. What leads to maximal happiness and what leads to maximal suffering. Maximal happiness is seen as this objective goal that we can use as a standard in order to determine what is good and what is evil. Consequentialism. So the point is that there can be this ultimate state of goodness and perfection that is desirable, and that can be an unadulterated inherent state of good. On the other hand, if you have an unadulterated inherent state of maximal evil, which would be the other end of the extreme, the most undesirable state possible, I'm right now I'm creating an asymmetry between those two, where I'm telling you one is more likely to be everlasting in a state of perfection and the other is not. You're not giving me reason for your disagreement, apart from the fact that you're just saying I'm making up definitions. Well, you agreed with definitions for the sake of argument, so let's just drive the argument home and see.
Right. So I'll explain it again. You can make up a criterion and say it's possible the evil God or that evil and good have this criterion of discomfort, and it's possible they don't. It's just something you've made up. It's possible that perfect. Wait. It's possible that the perfectly good being could be one that doesn't create anything and just exists on its own, and that's perfect goodness. So I can add in a made-up property of goodness that means that the God would not do anything. This world would not exist. So I can parody your argument by saying there's this other property of perfect goodness that I'm going to add in, there's no evidence for, and that's what exists in God.
Like what?
Like a God that wouldn't create anything other than himself.
Yeah. So so you think, because I'm you don't even get the argument, because right now I'm talking about what I'm trying to maintain is God's independence, and I'm trying to say that God's goodness or evil must be something that is maintained absent
Right.
anything else.
Right.
So his creation or lack thereof isn't the point. You can say that God's goodness would entail him creating something, and you can maybe make an argument about that, but that's not what I'm referring to. I am referring to I'm trying to maintain God's independence by saying that, this unadulterated state of ultimate goodness is more plausible on the idea of God's independence and eternality versus the other hypothesis you're putting forward of an evil God that is in a maximum state of, let's say, suffering or self-loathing.
Right. So
I think
you've made up this property of discomfort. Said this discomfort thing is a part of evil. I think it's not. I think discomfort has nothing to do with evil. And you're saying, well, if discomfort is a part of evil, then the evil God would be more likely to kill itself than the good God, because the good God is in pleasure or something. But that
so. Did
doesn't
you make
matter.
up a property of what's it called, minimum imposition of will? Sorry, maximum position of will.
That's
as
based on
most
empirical
evil?
evidence, so that has nothing to do with the topic. Again, I don't know.
No. What? How is it based on empirical evidence?
Moral intuition and moral progress. You can check out all of my the work I've done on the topic. Again, bringing up things that are completely relevant to the topic.
So I'm
We're asking you to
saying
explain.
Can we
that
go
a
back to the
maximal-
topic?
A maximal state of perfection and happiness is also based on our experience, which is empirical. So the point is that
No.
you're saying my idea of a maximal state of happiness and perfection is made up, but your idea of imposition of will is not made up. For what reason? I don't know, because what a max
What does this have to do with the
a
evil
lack
God
of
argument? Like,
it has
so
everything to do with an evil God argument. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to show you that there's an asymmetry between the idea of maximal desirability, as we agreed on that term, and maximal
there's not.
undesirability.
I've showed it's not.
No,
I've showed there is not one.
You just said my definition is made up, but
Yes,
I'm
yes.
telling
So-
you that
so-
I could say the same thing about your understanding of
Right.
maximum
So
position of
I'll
will.
explain it again. So you have the assumption that you feel discomfort, you would choose to kill yourself, therefore God would. That's false. You can't assume what God would feel based on your assumption of discomfort. So if there was a God who was perfectly discomfortable or evil, then he would not choose to do that. That is also a logical possibility.
So would you grant that you have the assumption that a lesser state of imposition on will leads to maximal?
This has
happiness?
nothing to do with the topic. Again,
It does, because you're inconsistent. You have an intuition about what makes a best possible world or a maximal state of happiness, and you're using it.
No,
but all of a sudden,
it has
when I
nothing to
use
do with
my
happiness.
intuition,
No.
I'm making stuff up.
again, you keep misrepresenting my model. Could you just go back
it's
to the
amoral.
topic?
I get that it's amoral. What
You
I'm-
don't.
so
You
that-
just. I keep
don't-
telling you, and you just keep repeating
no.
the same mistake over and over again. Can we just stop bringing up my model and stay on the topic?
No,
So
because I accept. Listen, TJump, I accepted your model, and what I said.
no, I don't
already-
want you to
Okay,
accept my
look,
model. You don't understand
No.
my model. I've told you this
okay,
multiple
put, okay,
times.
put your model aside. I think I do, but put
Thank
your
you.
model aside. What I accepted
You don't.
is the idea. Okay, fine. So what I accepted is the idea that, okay, we can think of this maximal state of goodness I'm talking about as a state of maximal perfection and desirability. You accepted my definitions and provided an alternative one with a maximum state of a lack of desirability, of indesirability, however you put it. And what I'm saying is, after we've accepted those definitions and moved forward, I showed you that it's more plausible for one to be everlasting over the other, which would probably be more self-loathing, and then you shifted back to the definitions being made up. I don't think that's
No,
don't
I
think
addressed
that's
both.
reasonable.
So I addressed both. I said, one, no, God could be unable to destroy himself or choose not to destroy himself. Either of those would both explain him being in an internal state of discomfort.
Yeah, I'm talking about plausibility. It's possible.
Yeah. So
I mean,
if God,
what you're
if God
saying is
wants
possible.
discomfort, wants to maximize discomfort, he would choose 100% of the time to continue to be in discomfort because he wants to maximize discomfort.
So I'll grant you that as a possibility. What I'm talking about here is more along the lines of plausibility. I am saying it is more plausible for someone who is in a state of happiness to be everlasting versus someone who is in a state of maximal suffering to be everlasting. You need to add into your hypothesis or to your counter example the assumption that he couldn't kill himself, or that he wouldn't because of some other consideration. I'm just saying, based on intuition, based on our intuitions, the idea is that a state of happiness is more likely to be everlasting and desirable, and versus a state of maximal suffering, which I think Dr. Chowdhury's argument would apply, and you would
No.
accept some form of, at least it is more plausible
Nope.
or more likely on the other
In
case
no
for
way.
that God to kill himself.
No, in
So
no
would you-
way
would you
does that
think-
make
would you-
sense.
So
So
would you think
obviously,
maximal suffering more likely leads to suicide than maximal happiness?
no, because you need other things like a brain and desires and motivation to live and all these other things that have nothing to do with the topic. So again, the topic
No.
is does an evil God, can it also explain goodness and evil in every way? Yes.
Logically speaking, I think it can. I think there are aspects of incoherence. What I'm
Wait, so
trying
so
to
let
hear
me
is
finish.
really
Let me
that one
finish.
is more
Let me
plausible than the other.
finish because I was trying to make a point here. So any type of percent chance that God would kill himself, there is a 1-to-1 correlation of a possibility that a perfect good God would create nothing but himself. So this was the original argument I made like a long time ago. Any kind of God,
But
evil
that's not
God.
even a parity argument.
Wait. Let me finish. Let me finish.
That's not-
So any kind of God you could imagine. There are lots of different possible kinds of perfectly evil gods. As Saf mentioned, one who wants to destroy himself. And there are infinitely many possible kinds of perfectly good gods, like the kind that only creates himself or only exists as himself. So any of these alternate possible kinds of evil gods you promote, there's also a possible kind of good God that does nothing and just exists himself and nothing else. That was the argument I made a long time ago to refute
Yeah,
this.
I granted you that earlier. That's fine. What we're trying to look for is an asymmetry. So I can agree that there are certain points that can be parodied. What I'm saying is that there are certain points that cannot.
What-
And what I'm trying to provide a case for is that the idea that it is more plausible to think of a state of happiness as one that is less likely to commit suicide versus a state of suffering. Sure, you need other considerations, but looking on this point at its own while maintaining the other considerations, other things put aside, you would have to agree that it is more plausible for happiness to result in a lack of suicide versus the other way around. So I'm not sure how you can
Discomfort.
argue against that. It just seems to be more plausible.
So
I don't know.
let me try to explain it again. So what I'm parodying here is the entire label of discomfort as being evil. You have made an argument where discomfort is evil. Now I can parody that and say something else is good, not discomfort. So I'm not saying comfort, I'm saying like the desire to only be loving yourself. That could be a personal property of goodness. So just like you make up a property of discomfort and say, well, this is inherent in evil, which I don't think it is. I can make up a property of good and say, this is inherent in good.
Yeah.
So
I
that's
see
a-
your point. I see your point, and I guess
Abdul, let
one
me
last
ask you a
point.
question.
Just one last
Let me
point.
no,
Sharif.
I'll
Yeah,
let
please.
you carry on. I just want to
Yeah.
clarify this point.
Yeah.
Abdul, what you're trying to say is this, from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, yeah? You're trying to say is I just have to give one example of an asymmetry, yeah?
Exactly.
One particular argument, yeah, within a subset of arguments that's asymmetrical. You're saying, here's one argument. The argument goes like this, that a being that's in a maximal state of happiness is more likely to live everlasting, eternally, than a being that's in an ever state of unhappiness or suffering, yeah, or self-loathing,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm
Therefore,
saying
that
is,
on
yeah.
its own, there is no parity between
Yeah.
the two. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm granting TJump that he can make parody arguments. He just said one, so sure. So if he defines goodness as let's say the desire to exist alone or not create, fine, I'll grant him that. It's a possibility. But then the point here is that meeting the evil god challenge doesn't require me to say that there are to conclude that there are no successful parody arguments. I am saying that I think there are a few very significant ones, but I'm providing you with one here. The point is that the fact that you look at this proposed asymmetry and say that, well, hey, you could say the same for something else, another property. I can grant you that other property. Right now, I'm talking about this specific one and what seems to be more plausible in the case of an everlasting perfect existence versus an everlasting imperfect suffering existence. I mean, this is just
Okay.
I
Let
think
me
it's
try to
obvious.
explain again. So there are many arguments that can go against an evil God, and there are equally as many arguments that go against a good God. So if you say there is a disparity in this one argument against an evil God, I can say there's a different argument that's a disparity against a good God, and that's a parity. That means there's a one-to-one correlation. So like if I say, here's an example of an evil God that would not work for some reason, and you could say, or I could say, here's an example of a good God that would not work for some reason, that's a parity argument. So now there's one good God and one evil God, both of them don't work. So we can rule those out, but that's one-to-one. That's a parity.
No, but TJump, that's not the evil God challenge. The evil God challenge is to say that the theodicies are symmetrical.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the argument.
Yes.
Now, it's not saying that, well, there is this one argument which proves an evil God over a good God, and then there's another argument that proves a good God over an evil God, and therefore they're symmetrical. It's not saying, it's saying the exact same argument theodicy is used to prove a good God can be used to prove an evil God.
Right.
Now, Abdul has given you one asymmetrical argument that you haven't really addressed.
So I did. Let me try to explain it again. Let me try to explain it again.
Not talking about any of the other arguments.
No.
His specific
The
argument.
symmetry, the evil being problem or challenge rests on at least three symmetries. They all have to hold for the challenge to hold, and that is the fact that an evil being and a maximally malevolent and maximally benevolent being are equally coherent. Equally. Two, that all natural theology arguments must point to both a malevolent being equally to a benevolent being. Yeah. And thirdly, there has to be a symmetry in the theodicy. So for the evil being challenge to hold, those three dimensions of the symmetry have to hold. But all the objector has to do is show an asymmetry in any one of those.
Right. So can I?
It's not a logical argument. It's not a, it's just, it's an attempt to undermine the evidence or justification for belief in the kind of creator that's omnicompetent.
So can I? Let me try to explain it this way. So I can say an all good God would contain the property of a round square. Now, obviously, I've just made up a property that has nothing to do with goodness and said it's a part of goodness. Now, obviously, that would be an argument against the good God, because if goodness contained a round square, obviously the good God wouldn't work and the evil God would work. That means, does that evidence of the evil God? Well, no, because making up a property that has nothing to do with goodness wouldn't be like something that would actually count, because you could just parry it. You could make up, say, no, an evil God is a round square. And so the fact that you can make up, wait, let me finish. So you can make up a property like discomfort, which has nothing to do with good or evil at all, and just arbitrarily put it into good and evil, isn't evidence that you're right. It just means you've made up a property that has nothing to do with good or evil and said, well, if there's this made up property, well, then maybe an evil God is less likely. But again, that property has nothing to do with good or evil. So it doesn't have anything to do with dismantling the evil God argument. The evil God argument still works.
You're right, but you just have to assume really that it is made up. I don't think it's made up. I think it's quite intuitive what I proposed about, a state of maximal perfection being, a state of ultimate goodness and desirability, and having the capacity to be everlasting and independent and all that stuff, versus a state of ultimate or maximal suffering. So I think there's intuitiveness and actually appeal to also experience in this in what I'm saying. I'm not saying, I don't think it's as arbitrary and meaningless as a squared circle. I think you want to say that because the asymmetry went somewhere, but I think the point is that I
can demonstrate that.
No, you can demonstrate what?
That it's equally as incoherent as a round square. So I can say, like, your assumption that like evil entails discomfort, which it doesn't. Like, there's nothing about like pure evil which would mean it has to be in discomfort. It would be like me saying that good entails a round square. Like, no.
So what is an ultimate state of goodness? Versus an ultimate state of evil.
Before Tom TJump responds, I think Saf, from my understanding, you have to go now. Is that correct?
Yeah. My apologies.
So I really appreciate. No problem.
Hours.
Jazakallah khair for coming on. Really appreciate it, inshallah.
Abdul, shukran.
Nice to meet you.
Take care, Chaudhry.
Lovely discussion. We'll pick up, I'm sure.
Okay,
and brilliant topic. Sorry that I got bow out this early.
No problem, inshallah. So I think let me understand your point, TJump, if I can, and then I'll let you respond to Abdul. So what you're trying to say is to say that a state of affairs for a being in discomfort, yeah, is somehow to claim that it's in discomfort would be incorrect. Is that what you're saying? A malevolent being to be in a state of absolute discomfort would be incorrect.
Yeah, because your intentionality, like your evilness and your motivations or your like emotional feelings are completely separate parts of the brain, but like anything. So like you could have the intentionality of being evil with absolutely no feeling whatsoever. So I don't think that your feeling of suffering has literally nothing to do with whether or not you're good or evil. Like you could be perfectly good and still feel suffering and still be perfectly good.
So suffering is not evil. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like suffering itself has nothing to do with good or evil. Discomfort has nothing to do with good or evil. So if there was like a perfectly good being, you could say that being is in discomfort, and it wouldn't make it any less good.
Okay, so then you wouldn't argue the way that some atheists do about the problem of suffering then.
Well, I argue for a logical version of the problem of suffering.
Why? If suffering's not evil, what's the problem with it?
The logical inconsistencies in the Bible, the Old Testament. So like it says this is bad. And like it says killing is bad or drowning babies is bad. God drowned babies in the global flood. God is bad. So it's a self-contradiction.
Okay, so then it's not a logical argument based on scripture is what you're saying. It's a conflict between scripture and itself, what it's also saying within scripture.
Yeah, logical contradiction.
But then that's a scriptural argument. It's not a philosophical argument.
That would still be a philosophical argument. Do you mean like if I used a different basis of morality to judge God as evil, I could do that too?
I'm saying you're showing an internal contradiction within the scripture.
Yes.
You're not saying that from the existence of suffering, therefore that's somehow logically contradictory with an all good God.
Right. What I do is I would say that if my model of morality is correct, then that would prove that the morality of the Old Testament God is incorrect, and that would be a logical disproof.
Why would that prove that? I'm just trying to understand.
Well, if my morality is correct, then it's objectively immoral to drown babies, and anything that drowns babies is immoral, and God did it, therefore God would be immoral.
Okay, yeah, but why is that objectively wrong?
Well, if my morality was proven correct, that's the first premise.
Okay, but it has nothing to do with that act being wrong has nothing to do with the baby suffering.
Right. It's not about the suffering. It's about the involuntary imposition of will based on my model, which can be done without suffering.
Right. And then now I see Abdul's point why he was going back to the imposition of will and God being alone. There's nothing to impose will.
You can still be imposed on by nature without other beings being there. Like
if nothing else exists, if it's just God by himself.
Right, like he could impose on himself. That's a possibility. Or things like reality could impose on the laws of logic.
How does he impose on himself? I don't understand.
Yeah, if he wills he wills it. He can't will and not will simultaneously.
But see,
wait. Let me answer the question. Let me answer the question. So
hold on a second.
You asked how can God? Wait, you asked how can God impose on himself? Like you can do that. You can like if I was God, I could say I would like to limit my powers, and so I turn my powers down, and I can't use those powers anymore. I have imposed on myself.
He can't do that because we already discussed that the whole discussion of what Saf just brought up, those 3 points, one of them is that the arguments from natural theology get to a being that has these omni attributes.
Oh yeah, so if
he limits his power, then he's no longer the perfect being.
Right. So if I granted that any of those worked as actual evidence, sure, yeah. Like if there was actual evidence that indicated.
But see, then that's the point. Then it goes back down to those fundamental arguments from the beginning, which is what I was trying to say. If you're already granting that, and the sake of argument for this
granting what
God, this evil God discussion is. It's amazing that I'm having to explain it because we've been discussing this for over 2 hours and you've been listening.
What?
I don't understand why.
Wait, let me see if I can try to. I think you're saying like. That if those arguments worked, then that would be evidence of God. So I have to grant those arguments, or I'm granting those arguments.
No, but the discussion of the evil God, this whole parody thing, is assuming, for the sake of argument, we have this evidence. Okay, we're saying which one is more likely.
Oh that's it's a reductio ad absurdum. So it's saying if you think this argument works, the way to show it doesn't work is to show that the same argument can work for the exact opposite conclusion. So it's not actually saying it's not saying this is a good argument. It's saying if this was, wait, let me finish. So it's not saying this is a good argument. It's saying it's a bad argument. And here's how we can show it's a bad argument. We show it leads to a contradiction. So in math, we do this all the time. We're not assuming it's true. We don't assume the proof is true.
I'm not saying you're assuming it's true. That's not what I'm saying.
We're assuming it's evidence. Assuming it's evidence. Is that right?
No. Listen to what I'm saying.
Okay.
What I'm saying is this discussion here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. When we're talking about comparing the evil being versus the omnibenevolent God, right?
Yeah.
The other properties that they have, as Saf was pointing out, both beings must possess those same properties. So if the evil being decides to limit his power, then he's no longer omnipotent, and therefore he doesn't share the same property that the good God has. So therefore, that is a break in the symmetry.
The good God could limit his powers, or the evil God could limit his powers. Either one would work. Like that would be that. No,
but I was giving an argument, and that's how we got to this point. Because then you had to say, well, the evil God would limit himself, limit his powers.
No, this would apply to both the evil or the good God. If you ask, how can God limit himself, like impose on himself? It would be
we don't believe it. Yeah, and that's the point. I'm saying that that's incoherent, because if God limits himself, then he's no longer omnipotent. That's the point.
No, he could still be omnipotent. Like I can turn my powers down and still have them in the background if not using them. But that wouldn't be a difference.
Sounds like a Christian idea of the incarnation. You have, I mean, no, that doesn't work, man.
That doesn't make a difference to the argument here. So a good God,
he doesn't have
let me finish. Let me finish. Let me finish. Let me finish the argument before you. Like, so a good God could limit his powers too. So like, remember, wait, stop. So in my model, involuntary imposition of will is immoral. Voluntary imposition of will, perfectly fine. So God could voluntarily choose to limit his power, still be good. And so the good God can also limit his powers if you're talking about my model.
We're saying no, it's not your model. We're saying that conflicts with God's omnipotence.
You asked about how in my model, given my definition of evil.
No, this is not your model. You're adding a new model when it comes to God in order to avoid the conclusion of the argument. That's what you're doing.
No, you added in my model. So what argument?
No, you just added it to the model of God. You're imposing.
No. You asked. Wait. You guys asked.
Your own definition of omnipotence when that's not the definition.
You guys asked, how can God restrict himself? You asked that. I didn't. You brought this up.
You can't, because it's incoherent.
So you brought up my model. I didn't. You brought this up. So I was just answering your question.
No. You said, how could he? And then your response was in virtue of trying to respond to my argument, and I'm saying it results in incoherency.
Which argument did that lead to?
God can't limit himself, because then he wouldn't be omnipotent. And in order for you to avoid the argument that was just being made, God would have to limit himself.
Okay, go back. What argument does that have anything to do with?
We were talking about
let me finish.
Will. How could God limit himself?
Oh, so you're bringing up my model. You have brought up my model, which has nothing to do with good and evil.
Exactly. When we're talking about imposition of will, but that has nothing to do with your own definition of omnipotence. So you're creating your own definition of omnipotence then.
No, like that would still be omnipotent.
Can you be omnipotent and restrict your own powers?
Yes, I can play a video.
Incoherent.
No, it's pretty limited. God can play a video game. Can God play Xbox?
I don't even know what that means.
Like he can like move the controllers or whatever. He's God, so he can.
Simple question.
Let me finish. I'd like to finish. So
God limit his powers.
So God could use the controller and only use the controller. He's all powerful, so he could just make the characters teleport and give himself invincibility, but he could choose to use the controller. So he's limiting himself to just use the controller.
He's not limiting himself. He's not limiting himself.
You're making it sound like saying that just refusing to do something for a moment is a limit, in the same sense that I have this limit that I can create a planet. But if you can give it back, if you can take it back,
yes.
If you can give that power back, then it's not a limit. It's still there. The possibility of it manifesting.
No, it's there though. It's there the whole time.
So
right, which is exactly what I said. So God said God can temporarily limit his powers by like using the controller.
Limiting his powers.
That's still a limit.
TJump,
There's a
let me-
not a
difference.
limit.
There's a difference between playing video games and imposing your own will. Those are two different things.
No,
You're saying
no,
that
it's
God
not.
can
Wait,
limit.
wait.
You're saying
Those
that
are-
God can limit His own will.
Yes.
He's not limiting His
wait,
will by
wait.
playing video games.
When I turn up the difficulty on a video game, I'm making it harder for myself. I could turn the difficulty down. I could give
There
myself
is no
invincibility.
harder for God. There's no
TJump, when
harder
you
for
turn
God.
up, so that point, when you turn up the difficulty, is it really more difficult for you, or is it just as easy?
It's really more difficult.
Yeah.
It's not
so
for
the point
God.
is, so it's not for God. So the point
Wait.
is, if God limits himself, I'm saying in that state of being limited, is he able to do all things?
Sure, but he's choosing to use
Okay,
just
so
the
he's
controller.
not
Wait,
limited.
wait, stop. Go back.
TJump,
Let
all
me
you're
explain it.
saying
Let
is
me explain it.
choosing not to do something is limiting yourself. That's all you're saying.
Yes, that's
So-
why it's
so
a
God has
choice.
to
So
literally
wait,
do
let me explain it.
everything
Let me explain it
in order
again.
to be unlimited.
Let me explain it again.
I
So,
don't
so
think
if
so.
God
Exactly.
chooses, if God chooses to use an Xbox controller and nothing but the Xbox controller, he is limiting himself. He could use all his powers,
Yeah.
but he doesn't. He's just using the Xbox
Listen,
controller.
It's not.
What you're
It's not
saying
limited.
basically entails
That's
that in
the
order for
same
God
as
to be
changing the
in order-
difficulty.
In order for God to be unlimited, he must literally actualize all
No,
his
I never
capabilities.
said
He
that.
must
That
literally
has nothing.
Yeah, that's what you're saying.
Just
That's what your
just one
position
second.
results
What
in.
you're saying, your position basically boils down to the idea that refraining from doing something is basically limiting yourself. Well,
Yes,
God refrains from doing a lot of
choosing.
things.
Yeah, so choosing to limit your own power, like say, I'm going to limit this power for this duration, is a limit. It's a
But how is
temporary
it
not
limit.
limiting
TJump,
him.
I asked you when you choose to
Temporary
make the
limits
game
are
more
limits.
difficult. When
It's
you
not a
choose- when you-
temporary limit. It's
when-
not.
When you
That's-
choose to
yes,
make
it
the
is.
game
Because
more
God
difficult,
doesn't. Okay, so because God
Wait,
didn't create a leprechaun.
let
that
me
means
let me
he's not-
answer
he's
Abdul.
limiting.
Let me answer Abdul. So Abdul is asking
I know you
if
want to answer Abdul.
yes, because I've answered you like 10 times in a row. So Abdul asked
No,
if I
you didn't.
wait. Let
You didn't.
me answer Abdul. So Abdul asked if I change the difficulty, is it limiting? Yes, I could turn it back down. Wait. Let me
Sorry,
finish.
That's not what I asked. But that's not what I asked. Let me. I'm just gonna ask the question. You
Okay,
can answer
go
it.
for it.
I said
Go for it.
when you change the difficulty, is it really more difficult, or is it just as easy?
Yes, and so my answer is if God chooses to only use the controller,
No,
is
you
it
didn't answer the question.
really?
Answer the
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So if God chooses to only use the controller rather than his powers, it would be more difficult for God.
What?
do you mean?
So
Well, then
just
he
like
wouldn't be
If God changes the difficulty and chooses to only use the controller, can he use the controller to play the game in just as easily as he does on an easier level? Can he?
no, because he could like just
So he doesn't have that ability.
so like if God has the access to all of his powers, he could beat the game much easier than if he's just using a controller.
If he's using the controller, right, and he ups the difficulty,
Ups the
then
difficulty.
then for him, he has the ability to make that game just as easy as it was
Okay,
on the easier level.
the controller
point
is the
point
difficulty.
just so we don't get sidetracked on the whole game analogy. The point is when you say God limits himself, and I asked you whether in that limited state God can still do all things and is unlimited, you have to say yes. So he's both unlimited
Okay.
and limited at the same time.
I don't think you
That's
understood the analogy.
contradiction.
I don't think you understood. So in the analogy, wait. So I can turn the difficulty up. If God uses a controller, that is turning the difficulty up for God. God is choosing to turn the difficulty up by limiting himself to a controller.
Bro, really, that doesn't make sense.
TJump,
Because at the same
no,
time, you
no.
want to say that while the difficulty is up, he is still able to
Yeah,
do all
that's like
things.
saying if
Yes.
God does anything, he's limiting himself. That's ridiculous.
No,
I mean,
God.
come on, man.
This is not hard
This
to
is
understand.
bad.
If
This is
God,
really bad.
It is.
if God
is.
chooses to use, this is like basic philosophy 101. Like everyone in philosophy grants this. This is super simple. So if
Grants
God,
what?
wait.
Yeah, grants
If
what? That
someone-
what you're saying is ridiculous.
So let me explain it. Like I'm trying to explain it. If you don't interrupt, I'll actually get
Okay,
there.
go ahead.
Yeah, but
go
you're
ahead.
So,
saying God
so
does
let me
anything, he
explain
limits
it. Let
himself.
me explain it.
Let
So
him explain
if
that.
a person chooses to use a tool which it is harder to do something, it is limiting because it is taking away from their capabilities. Like for example, if someone chose to like use a slingshot rather than a gun to hit a target 100 yards away, that is limiting because that is harder to do. So if God chooses to limit himself by using a controller rather than his all-powerful just snap his fingers means, that is limiting. He is choosing to limit himself to using the controller. That's all I'm
No,
saying here. This is very basic
we can
philosophy.
just agree to disagree.
Yeah, we'll
but
just move on,
I
buddy.
think the idea is that, you know, when he chooses to use the controller, by definition of his unlimited omnipotence, he has the ability to make using the controller just as easy as snapping his fingers. There are no
Exactly.
different levels of difficulty and easiness for an unlimited omnipotent creator.
That
You're
wouldn't be
basically
using the
saying
controller.
He is both unable and able at the same time in the same way, which is a contradiction. So
No,
I
no.
think that's my view. I think that's fine. You're free to disagree, TJump, but I think it's quite clear
Yeah.
that you're being incoherent. No disrespect. Thank you. Enjoyed having you on. Hope to have you on again. Guys, I can't see the back channel if no one's waiting.
Yeah, no. We've got a few people waiting,
Yeah.
and TJump has been on for quite a while, so
Sure.
we're gonna have to move on.
Thanks for
Yep,
coming on.
thanks
And
for
sorry
coming
if it got a bit heated, but yeah.
No problem. Appreciate it. Nice meeting you guys. I'll talk to you later.
Care.
All right,
Bye-bye.
take care.